Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, roll call, please.
Sherry Budd.
Here.
Bernie Grant. Peter Creel. Medina Atkinson. Jackson Paul. Jeff Jar.
Here.
Brian Cullen.
Here. Also, in front of us is an agenda for this evening. Do I have any action concerning the agenda?
Through the chair, make a motion, we approve the agenda of the Planning Commission for April the 26th as presented. April the 22nd as presented.
Mr. Chairman, I support that motion, but I'd like to bring up a point of order. I think it's very difficult to hear. I think we got to make sure we talk into the microphones. That was support for approval of the agenda, sir. Sorry.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented and supported. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We also have before us the meeting, the minutes of the meeting from April 8th of 2026. Do I have any action concerning this item?
Chair, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 8th, 2026.
Support.
Motion and support to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 8th, 2026. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Motion carries. Next up, correspondence and announcements. Director Akers, do we have anything at this time?
Chairman, I have no correspondence or announcements at this time.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, general public comment. Oh, yeah, on the correspondence announcements. City of Belleville and Sumter Township upcoming Planning Commission meetings are May 14th, 2026. If you would care to attend. General public comment. At this time, anyone in the audience that has a comment concerning any item that is not listed on the agenda, please come forward, have a say. Come to the microphone, speak your name and address, where you're from, and go ahead.
My name is Monique Kirkowski. I live in Van Buren for now. What is the agenda? Can I ask that question? Because I'm confused.
It's printed right over on the podium over there.
On my comment, I really was curious because I thought it was DT only, but I'm noticing that it's also Panattoni. Is that correct? As I walk over there and grab it?
DTE at Panattoni.
And is it the sound study as well? And not just DTE? So it's the sound study, it's the whole project then?
Not the project, it is. Director Akers, could you expound on that a little bit?
Sure. So the application before us this evening, or that's going to be before us under new business item number 1, is the preliminary site plan approval for the DTE ITC substation, which is located on the Project Canotely Data Center site. So that is the item before that. I mean, when we go through the planner review letter, they'll discuss the scope of work and the scope of the review as part of the application.
Okay, thank you. So, for the public comment, do we have anyone? Seeing none, moving ahead, we do not have a public hearing nor any old business before us. So, new business. Item number 1, 26-004, DTE ITC substation, preliminary site plan approval. A request by applicant DTE Electric Company in collaboration with ITC proposes the construction of a high-voltage substation switching station. The parcel is located on the east side of Haggerty Road, across from Old Haggerty Road, within the boundaries of the Project Cannoli Data Center. This time, presentation from the township staff, Director Akers.
Thank you very much. I will turn the presentation over to our township planner, Lauren Sayer.
Thank you, Director Akers. So before getting into the site plan review, I do want to just clarify the scope of review tonight, and that is limited to the substation and the associated equipment yards adjacent to Building 1 and 2. So this review does not reopen or alter any of the previously approved site plan elements that are unrelated to the substation. Certain areas within the equipment yards around Building 1 and 2 were modified as a direct result of the substation design and development, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in the planning review, but these modifications were necessary to support the finalized substation layout rather than representing a change in the approved use of the site. So the change was from generators to power conditioning units, and again, this is ancillary to the substation design, and that is also why it is included in the planning report as well. So with that being said, this substation is located along a split zone parcel. So the top portion is M1, which is light industrial, and then the bottom portion is C1, which is general business district. The substation is a by right use in both the M1 and the C1. Again, as noted, the power conditioning units replace most of the generators that were previously proposed. A table is noted on page 3 of the review of the changes and the dimensions of those units. And so the footprint of where those are being located isn't changing. They're not adding additional yards or anything like that. It's just substituting out the equipment within those. In terms of the dimensional requirements, the applicant's meeting all of the required setbacks. We did note that there seemed to be a dimension just wrong on the front setback in the C1, where it looked like it terminated where the substation boundary previously was. So just a note to fix that in the final site plan. In terms of emergency access, we defer to any fire marshal comments if they have any additional comments. Regarding the landscaping, again, just a minor discrepancy from the previously approved. We would just ask the applicant to confirm the final open space area identified and the trees provided, and provide clarification if there was a deviation from the previously approved site plan. Again, they're still proposing the same amount of trees as they had previously proposed, and they did also specify that the substation was not included in the open space calculations. In terms of the screening of the tanks, they did shift a little bit. They did provide a rendering to show that it's being screened. There's an existing drain easement, but it would be screened by the existing vegetation. Stormwater would be subject to Wayne County and the township engineer. In terms of signage, if there's any additional emergency signage, the fire marshal would require. That would also be a condition of final site plan approval. They are proposing an 8-foot tall, dark, either black or dark gray security fence. An image of the fence was included in your report as an example. Planning Commission has the authority to approve an increase in height. So currently they're allowed 6 feet, but Planning Commission can allow up to 8 feet. And they also did provide an updated noise study. So the noise study referenced in this letter I believe they did provide an updated one dated April 17th that did address the clarifying number of PCUs, as well as confirming that the PCUs would not be, are included in the noise study and were included in the results of that noise study. So given all of these, the outstanding items are fairly minor. Again, revision to the front yard setback dimension to ensure that's correct, clarification of the open space identified, and if required, explanation of the discrepancy, planning commission approval of the increase in the security fence from 6 feet to 8 feet, and the confirmation of the number of PCUs in the project and that it's included in the noise study, and then of course fire marshal and township engineer, Wayne County approvals. So given that, we would recommend that planning commission grant preliminary site plan approval for the substation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, Fishbeck reviewed the plans dated April 2nd, 2026 for the site development Project Cannoli Power Conditioning and DTE and ITC substation located on the north side of the I-94 service drive between Haggerty and Hannon Road. The comments in our letter are based on the requirements established by the Engineering Standards Manual for the Charter of Township of Van Buren dated April 2020 or 2014. Should be noted at this time that when we review things in a preliminary site plan review, we are reviewing them for engineering feasibility, and further investigation and review will be conducted upon the submittal of the engineering plans for this particular site. So in general, due to this being a substation with minimal public utilities, our comments are somewhat brief, so I will go through them and summarize the best that I can. There are some general comments within the plans that need to be added, certain notes, requirements, information on soil borings, information on easements, and in general, as Director Akers mentioned and others, there have been some changes to the equipment yards based on the power conditioning and the design of the power in general. So one of our main comments is just to make sure that as the project moves forward, that the Project Cannoli plans match up with the substation plans to make sure that they're working in harmony. For stormwater management is the big engineering question or review item. The Project Cannoli site, when approved, did account for a substation within their calculations for their detention ponds on site. The plans before us here took into account the stormwater basin number 1, which all runoff will be collected via swales or underground sewers and discharged into storm water pond number 1. Couple of our comments is just to make sure that, as we mentioned, the Project Cannoli site updates their ponds and calculations based on the size and the runoff caused by the substation as they work through the final design, and that it must account for all new power conditioning yards, access drives, or attenuation tanks. If anything slightly changes based on the new equipment in the equipment yards, all of those need to be accounted for when you calculate your stormwater management and stormwater detention. There's some minor comments about basin sizes and a few things like that, which we'll get into as we move forward into the engineering design of things, but at this point they're there for the applicant's use and to make sure that they hit those items prior to coming to engineering review. Same with paving and grading. We make some comments about geometrics, must follow the fire marshal's review for emergency accessibility and accessibility around the substation. There is some I would say, lack of information on the surface material in the equipment yards themselves, which we would like to see clarified, whether it's an aggregate base or paved material, but we feel that that can be worked out as we move forward. We did look at the updated acoustic report, and we did have a couple of comments which we sent back to the applicant late last week. We asked about the PCUs, the power conditioning units, and making sure that they were shown in the tables on the report, which the report now indicates this. We did confirm as well, the report shows that the substation, the switch yard, contributes no sound to the sound study. The applicant did confirm that they are a non-noise generating equipment in those substation/switch yards, and the transformers that are further off-site as part of the other plan are kind of what the noise generation is, where it comes from. So they did confirm that, and they updated the study there was in one of the studies, they do show, as they go through the generator maintenance, they were showing one of the maintenance generators that was further from the road. We asked them to update it to show the worst-case scenario, which would be if they're maintaining or running those two generators closest to the road. So they did update that, so it's kind of worst-case scenario for the maintenance of those generators, and that is indicated in the new updated sound study dated April 17th. Other than that, some minor comments about soil erosion. Still need to get a Wayne County permit for that. And other than that, for the feasibility, the engineering feasibility of the sound or of the substation, Fishbeck recommends that the Planning Commission grant preliminary site plan approval, subject to the comments in our letter being addressed prior to them submitting for engineering review. With that, I will happily answer any questions the Planning Commission may have.
Okay, thank you. Director Akers.
For the fire report, I will turn it over to our fire marshal, Deputy Fire Chief Andy Lenahan.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, I did a preliminary site plan review for the DT substation and the power conditioning units. As far as the substation goes, the International Fire Code does not apply to any electric utility or lawfully designated agency. So with that being said, the only request we had is that they provide us with a sign out front at the front gates with some emergency contact information. As far as emergency vehicle access plan or NOx access, don't require it and really don't even want it. So that's the extent of my review for the substation. When it comes to the power conditioning units, under the control of NFP 855 and Section 1207 of the International Fire Code. After final site plan approval and prior to the installation of the power conditioning units, the following shall be provided with either an operational permit or a construction permit. This is the submittal for a permit shall be prepared by a design professional and include a fire protection engineer of record for the project. Large-scale fire testing will need to be conducted on a representative power conditioning unit in accordance with UL 9540A, showing that one fire will not propagate or spread to an adjacent unit. A complete report shall be provided by a fire protection engineer for this. Shop drawings for a fire alarm system will need to be provided in accordance with the IFC, and they will have to include specific details on the string of units as well as the overall fire alarm system. A diagram will need to be provided that shows the layout, location, and the energy rating of the PCUs. Manufacturer's cut sheets that show the ratings and listing documents for the equipment installed will need to be provided. Details on the battery energy, the energy management system will need to be provided, as will a commissioning and decommissioning plan. A fire safety and evacuation plan will need to be provided, as well as a hazard mitigation analysis. Details for standby mechanical exhaust will need to be provided, and that standby power needs to be for a 2-hour duration. And that system will be supervised by the fire alarm system. Gas detection will need to be provided. And details on the explosion, any explosion prevention system will also need to be provided. Details on emergency response and planning and training for on-site staff, as well as the Van Buren Township Fire Department, will need to be provided. And a disconnecting means for the power control units will also need to be provided. Lastly, any overhead utility lines aren't shown on there, and they cannot interfere with our aerial ladder access. So if there is going to be any kind of obstructions, we need to see them on plans. That is the extent of my review, and I'll gladly answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Director Akers?
Yes, so the only thing I just wanted to add to all the reviewers' comments is, we had gotten questions regarding the scope of the review and how they tie in together. So I just wanted to highlight that, DTE ITC has to do the design for the substation. And the applicants will explain it probably better than I can, but the power conditioning units are part of the substations, have functions with regards to the substation's operation. One of the reasons why they resubmitted a sound study is because we asked them to resubmit the sound study. As you know, with the power conditioning units and some of the battery energy storage systems research the board has done, we do know that they give off noise. We wanted to ensure that the project was still within our ordinance noise limits, and it wasn't increasing it any significant manner. So that was why we had made the adjustment. So with that, I conclude our presentation.
Thank you. Applicant.
Good evening. Thanks for having us back again. My name is Trey Bryce. I'm a lawyer with Taft Law, and I am here on behalf of Panattoni Development, the developer of the greater Cannoli project. Along with tonight, and you'll hear from both representatives from Panattoni, ITC, DTE, and Kimley Horn, the civil engineer. As I said, this is part of the preliminary site plan, or adjacent to, associated with this preliminary site plan approval for the Cannoli project. Make sure I stay up there. That was received preliminary site plan approval on February 11th. It is a 9-acre area, not a separate parcel, not a separate tax parcel, but a 9-acre area within the greater 282 acres of the Cannoli project. There's also a 12.7-acre area corridor for the power lines. As you know, for this, the standard for preliminary site plan approval is to determine if the plan as presented is in compliance with the zoning ordinances. As you heard from the staff reports, and will be shown in more detail from the presentations that you will hear in a moment, it is a permitted use in both it's a split zone, the M1 and the C1, and so it is a use by right. We're not asking for any variances. It meets all of the requirements. All the information has been submitted. There are actually 2 deviations that are being requested. I think only one was noted on the fence height. The parking requirement, we're asking for a deviation from that because people don't go to or use the station itself, and so the parking is a negative impact on environment that we don't really are trying to avoid. This really is, as we said, it's a utility infrastructure, and it's ancillary. I believe the planner said that to the greater project. We're going to talk about some of the electrical infrastructure, the layout, the design, community impacts. Key to what has been said a couple times is both what the review today is and what it isn't. And so what we're looking for is the switching station itself, its layout design, the overhead line routes, the required equipment for the station, landscaping, screening, lighting and other safety elements. What we're not actually here to do, and what was done in the previous, one hand, in the previous preliminary site plan approval, and will be then reserved for final site plan approval, we've got the things that were already previously approved, all the buildings from the data center, the campus development, the access roads, those sort of things. Stormwater system was previously approved, and other elements that were part of that review. This is separate just on the DTE switch center. And so as it's shown with meeting all the requirements, it's appropriate for your approval, subject to the couple of the staff conditions that were mentioned and hopefully the deviations. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam Kramer with Panattoni to Development to start really the nuts and bolts of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Adam Kramer with Panattoni Development, for the record. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. I think what we want to make sure as we go through this presentation, and this is just to give you a preview, is how we're tying together the three parties that are part of this, right? This is, as Trey noted, all of this is happening inside of the single parcel that we will have here for this project. And it is representative of the partnership between ITC, DTE, and ourselves as the developer for this project and putting together the necessary infrastructure to support this. As we go through the presentation tonight, we are also addressing some of the concerns that were brought up in advance of this at the previous site plan hearing from this commission as well. And we will, at the end of this, have visual representations from a number of different angles of what this will look like from different points of view as requested, even more than we had at our previous site plan here. We're eager to talk about that. But again, the purpose is to kind of talk about how we are fully integrating in the ITC switching station, the DTE overhead utility lines, and the required equipment. One of the items we did want to address for the record here, because I think there'd been some confusion, this project is and remains a 1 gigawatt project. The additional 1.7 gigawatts reflected by our client's broader investment in their public announcement is in regards to clean renewable energy resources that will support the overall energy grid. It is not an expansion of the site itself. And we are providing this clarification just to make sure that it is on the record, as everything we're doing here is on the record, that this is not an expansion of this project. The team you'll see here today represents not just Panattoni, but strong Michigan roots again. In addition to Panattoni data centers and our team that is here today, we have Kimley Horn of Michigan, who is the premier civil engineering firm, especially for data centers. And with us today, we have DTE Energy, more than 100 years of serving Southeast Michigan, and we have ITC with us as well. With that said, I'm going to hand it over to Jeremy from ITC.
Good evening, and thank you to the chair, Planning Commission members. Thank you for allowing me the time and to speak and the opportunity. My name is Jeremy Durr. I'm with ITC, Local Government and Community Affairs team, and I'm here to present and to discuss the preliminary site plan for the switching station, which can also be defined as a substation. So with that being said, let me first, in efforts to provide clarity as it relates to why you may hear substation, switching station, et cetera. It's because substation is a switching station, and switching station is a general term that's typically used and is interchangeable. And so the preliminary site plan layout I will be discussing today is a switching station to show that this type of substation will not essentially change voltage. So the word substation is a broader term referring to any facility that transforms voltage, levels, switches, circuits, and provides protection and control. However, when referring one over the other within the industry, it's to show that a substation, which generally will have noise emitting equipment installed, such as a transformer or reactor, and they are installed to transform voltage from one level to another, whereas a switching station is a type of substation which has no voltage change. Therefore, it does not have noise emitting equipment that was previously stated. Moving to the next slide. So as you see there, the switching station preliminary site plan layout, the top right picture, you will see, or rendering, you will see the preliminary site plan layout. From left to right, you will see that it has several rows of electrical equipment to include but not limited to disconnect switches, breakers, buses, cap banks, control houses, and H-frames, etc. So the picture at the bottom of the slide is a side profile of the row of equipment, which is pictured above. And so the H-frames, where the arrow is, the green arrow that's connecting from one equipment to show where it is as far as the side profile, that is the H-frame, and it's called out because it is representative of the overall tallest equipment in the station, which is overall height is approximately 80 feet tall. Other equipment such as buses and cap banks are approximately between 30 feet and 40 feet. But as you see the row pictured below, the majority of the equipment installed on site is below 24 feet. So before I move to the next slide, just to point out or make a few points, notes about the site. The site will be unmanned. It's an unmanned site unless maintenance work is being performed. Equipment is monitored by our ITC operation control room, which is a 24/7 by 365 operation. Since this site is a switching station, noise emitting equipment, as I stated earlier, such as transformers or reactors, which have that constant hum that many are concerned about typically when they approach a substation, that will not be installed on site as it relates to the switching station. As it relates to magnetic field concerns, levels from the substation are within the range of common exposures encountered in many residential and occupational businesses and environments. So this particular slide is to provide a visual of what the site would look like. Here are a few pictures of a similar ITC 345 kV switching station. Here you would see the H-frames that are called out in green there. The H-frames look like, to show you what the H-frames would look like, as well as the side profile rendering of the equipment row, which is on the picture to the left that is identified with the side profile of equipment row. You also see here pictured an 8-foot fence that will enclose the site. Now, this is not the 8-foot fence that we are looking to install, but it was just essentially to show the footage as far as the fencing that we typically use at our substations. And that leads me into the next slide to discuss fencing and security. And so what we are looking to install is this palisade-style fence, which stands about 8 feet, that will enclose the site. This site will have access control, or it will be access control, and that is monitored by our ITC Security Command Center, which is another 24/7 by 365 operation as well. As it relates to the emergency signage, as you see there, the sign, we will have it installed at the vehicle main gate of the site. It will be clear and visible. The size is about 28 inches in width and 18 inches in length. It includes the station name, address, and ITC emergency number displayed, which is the emergency number to our Security Command Center. And again, that is the 24/7, 365 operation. If somebody called that number at any given time, they will get a person that will pick up and respond accordingly. And lastly, as it relates to the switching station that I have to add, as it relates to the lighting plan, lights are installed focused downward. They are installed on control house as well as equipment rows, strategic on the equipment rows, also facing downward. So lights are not typically on unless there is somebody on site performing work. So the lights are always in the off position. Therefore, there should be no spillage from the site that will impact the surrounding community and properties. With that, I will turn it over to Michael from DTE. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good evening, Board. Michael Witkowski, Engineering Manager with DTE Energy. Here to talk about the overhead lines that DTE will be building between the ITC switching station and the customer-owned substations. Looking at the overall site, again, our role as DTE is both to manage the customer relationship and also to transfer the power between the ITC switchyard and the customer-owned substations. So to do so, we're going to establish overhead lines, steel poles, You can see a image here on the bottom right of what those will look like. Two sets of poles going to the north substation and two sets of poles going to the east substation. Those poles will range in height between 100 to as high as 150 feet. The height is driven by increasing span lengths to minimize the poles. You can see here a quick rendering of the spans, especially going to the east. We are proposing some longer span lengths to reduce the number of poles that are through that parcel. And then currently on the site, there is a series of overhead poles, wood poles, with both DTE-owned subtransmission and distribution circuits. A large portion of these will be removed as part of this project, and others will be relocated as part of the project. Some of the lines are de-energized. Some of the lines, like I said, will be rebuilt and relocated, so that should improve some of the circuits that serve customers in the vicinity as well. With that, I'm going to hand it over to talk about some of the aspects of the contract that we do have with the end customer.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Barbara Reichwalder. I'm manager of DTE's Corporate and Government Affairs Group. Because data centers play such a key role in Michigan's energy future, DTE has executed 4 contracts with Google that offer key protections for our customers. When we were here previously, we talked about these agreements in concept. We wanted to bring this topic back to you and share the agreements for full transparency. The first contract is a primary supply agreement, or PSA. Under this agreement, Google agrees to take service under DTE's Standard Industrial Service Rate D11 for a period of 20 years. And whether Google uses the power or not, they agree to pay 80% of their billing demand. Additionally, in order to cancel the agreement, Google is required to make a termination payment, and they must meet credit and collateral requirements. Most importantly, taking service under this rate ensures that the benefits of serving Google's load outweigh the costs. The second contract is a Clean Capacity Accelerator Agreement, or CCAA. This agreement promotes DTE's, whoops, I accidentally bumped something there, sorry. This agreement promotes DTE's transition to net carbon zero by 2050 and supports Michigan's renewable portfolio standard and clean energy standard. DTE will deploy up to 450 megawatts of energy storage and 1,600 megawatts of renewable generation. Most importantly, Google will fully pay for both the energy storage and renewable generation. No costs will be passed on to DTE's other customers. The third agreement is a Demand Response Agreement, or DRA. In this agreement, Google committed to reduce their load during emergency situations to maintain system reliability. The fourth contract is a Line Extension Agreement, or LEA. DTE will connect Google's self-built and wholly owned substation to the ITC transmission system that the team is presenting tonight. Google will fully pay for the upgrades and connection to cover all of DTE's costs. In summary, once the data center comes online, serving Google's load under these 4 agreements is expected to deliver a benefit to DT customers of $1.7 billion. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners and Van Buren Township staff. My name is Josh Capps, and I'm a director with Panattoni. I will be given an overview of the utility required power conditioning system, why they are required, how they interact with the electrical system, and review the results of the updated noise study for the campus. First, why they are required. They're required to support stable and efficient power delivery. This is to ensure that our facility does not strain the power grid and can provide predictability and certainty to DTE about the loads they will receive. This ultimately ensures grid reliability and is one of the safeguards required by DTE to deliver for all of its customers, not just this campus. The primary use of this equipment is to serve the electricity needs of the project and is used for no other purpose, deeming it an accessory use to the facility. On the screen here, I've highlighted in green the locations of the equipment. If you recall from our presentation in February, this was where the majority of the 156 generators proposed were located. I'm pleased to announce that our client has made the decision to reduce the generator count by 85%. That looks like going from 156 generators down to 24 generators. And those 24 generators, the majority of them are serving life safety purposes for emergency power for the people that would be working in the facility, and the remainder are for freeze protection for the equipment in the event power was lost during winter months. The generator would be there to make sure that they didn't lose their investment on the hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment in the yards. I would like to state that this is a testament to the client and their commitment to this community and being an active listener to the concerns and taking action. This equipment meets or exceeds IFC 1207 and NFPA 855 as mentioned in Fire Marshal Lanahan's report, and is a reduction in overall equipment height by 10 feet inside of the yards compared to the generators, is quieter than the generators by a considerable amount, and a significant reduction in diesel emissions. Now for how they interact with the electrical system. As the facility runs computing cycles, the electrical load fluctuates up and down. Essentially, these units send power to the facility during peak computing cycles and act as the stabilizing means for the overall electrical system. And this is to prevent load fluctuations on the power grid. This reduces sudden spikes in energy usage and supports overall grid stability. The system is fully integrated with the facility's control system, has no independent dispatch capability, and is in no way configured for market participation or standalone use. Next, I will review the updated noise study, which includes the evaluation of DTE ITC infrastructure and the power conditioning units, as well as the rest of the noise emitting equipment throughout the campus. The results from our comprehensive study indicate compliance with the noise limitations set forth in the zoning ordinance, and in all instances operate within the acceptable noise thresholds. The McKenna letter asked for clarification on the equipment count discrepancy between the PSP plan submission and the noise study count submission. In short, both are correct. For every power conditioning unit, there are 2 noise sources that are to be counted in the noise study. They have 2 fans that are tied to each unit. So you'll see a doubling of the equipment if you look at the report from McKenna, and that is what is the discrepancy. So there truly isn't one. Each equipment has 2 noise sources. All are accounted for. Excuse me, next page. All right, now I'll get into the noise study. As you'll see here on the screen, we have updated the study to include all of the equipment previously mentioned, and set forth with the pink line representing the residential noise threshold. So that is the lower of the 3 noise limitations, with industrial being at 80, commercial being at 75, and residential being at 67. And we're demonstrating here that we are within the residential thresholds at the property line. We've also modeled the generators closest to the noise receptors, addressing Mr. Kammer's comment in maintenance mode to display the peak operational sound of the campus. The DTE ITC equipment is not sound generating and is why you don't see noise propagation from their equipment. When comparing the ambient noise to our projected noise, we see very similar results to our last study. The blue figure is the nighttime ambient sound from the study that we did with 3 inches of snow on the ground. The green figure is our projected noise, and the yellow is the difference between ambient, which is what was experienced on that day at night with 3 inches of snow on the ground, which has a dampening effect on sound, and our projected noise. And in all instances, we are quieter than ambient, which is demonstrating that we meet the noise requirements of the zoning ordinance. And with that, I'll hand it over to Matt Hayter with Kimley Horn.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening, Plan Commission. My name is Matt Haydar. I'm with Kimley Horn, the on-site civil engineer for Project Cannoli. I'm here to add some context to the visual aspects of the switching station, particularly in the public right-of-way. The station's location was strategically chosen to optimize visual screening from the Haggerty Road right-of-way and neighboring properties. The switching station is set back 135 feet from Haggerty Road, from the Haggerty Road right-of-way, to be clear. And to address one of the comments from the McKenna letter, the setback was labeled as 122 feet. With the shrinking of the substation, it has increased to 135 feet. This exceeds the 75-foot setback requirement for the C1 zoning and the 50-foot setback requirement for the M1 zoning. The provided setback allows for ample space to incorporate a screening berm without encroaching on the existing smock and spear drain located east of the switching station. The screening berm has a variable height from 10 feet to 15 feet and would be planted with a dense coverage of evergreen trees to provide year-round screening. The tree placement exceeds the township's zoning requirements for plantings and greenbelt screening. The only equipment that will be visible from the Haggerty Road right-of-way will be the 80-foot tall H-frames located within the switching station and the 150-foot tall DTE transmission poles located further within the site. Kimley Horn has prepared additional renderings to help provide a visual aid to show what the site will look like while driving along Haggerty Road and from the subdivisions to the west. The diagram shown on screen illustrates a cross-section from Haggerty Road near the substation. It highlights the evergreen trees atop the berm, which are shown at 1 year, 10-year, and 30-year maturity levels. The diagram line, or the diagonal line from the car represents the driver's lowest line of sight into the switching station. Upon initial build-out, the landscaping will effectively screen all equipment within the switching station except those 80-foot tall H-frames. What you see here is a rendering showing a visual representation of Building 1 from a car driving southbound along Haggerty Road near the Wayne County Community College campus entrance. The top of the building will be visible at initial build-out, but all the equipment within the PCS yard to the north of the building will be completely screened by the trees and the berm. Rendering B, as shown on the screen, shows a visual representation of the site from a car on Haggerty Road looking directly east towards Building 1. You'll notice the building is not visible at all behind the tree screening in yards. Rendering C shows a representation of the switching station from a car on Haggerty Road looking southeast. The rendering combines existing vegetation within the Smock and Spear drain with the proposed, in tandem with the proposed berm and landscaping screening to effectively screen all equipment within the switching station except for the aforementioned H-frames. Rendering D depicts what the site would look like driving east along McKinley Street. Once again, would like to reiterate that none of the equipment is showing except for those H-frames and the 150-foot tall transmission poles. Similar situation here with McBride Avenue. Rendering F illustrates the emergency entrance off of Haggerty Road. The alignment and the berm were redesigned from the original approved cannoli site layout to enhance screening of the switching station when viewed through the entrance corridor. To address one of the other comments that McKenna had presented in their letter regarding undeveloped land on site, there was a 1% increase in disturbed land due to this reconfiguration of the entrance road, as well as the sidewalk along the I-94 service drive. Rendering G depicts the transition from the proposed berm and vegetation to the, rendering G depicts the transition from the proposed berm and the proposed vegetation on the berm, along with the existing vegetation south of the substation. The existing vegetation is shown in winter conditions to highlight the screening effectiveness even without the summer foliage. In summary, the location of the switching station was strategically placed to minimize the visual impact on the surrounding neighborhood in Haggerty Road. Now I'll pass the floor back to Trey for closing statements.
Thanks, Matt. So in closing, I'd like to thank you again for having us here. I'd like to thank you on behalf of myself, the developer, engineer, ITC, and DTE. We've come to you with the preliminary site plan for what is a necessary component in the greater project that will, as you heard, bring, that's necessary. The project itself is going to bring this massive economic and technological driver to the township, to Wayne County, and to Southeast Michigan. You've heard the full presentation on the utility infrastructure, the updated noise study, the updated corresponding view corridors, which shows that the project meets all of the necessary zoning requirements. Not only meets it, it exceeds it, and not only in small, but in drastic areas as well. This has shown the careful planning by the project team, especially with the concealing, using the screening and landscaping to minimize any sort of visual impact on the greater public. As we alluded earlier, based on the relevant site plan approval, preliminary site plan approval requirements, having met all of the requirements, all the information submitted, the project is appropriate and should be approved by the Planning Commission for preliminary site plan approval. And with that, I will thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners, it's our time.
Through the chair, I have a procedural question, to begin this off. Just I'm a little confused. These are two separate applications. The first one was for the hyperscale data center, correct? And the second one is purely for the DTE substation. Yet they're proposing to modify the first one that was given preliminary site plan. Shouldn't it go back to a resubmission of the preliminary to provide that equipment to get updated versus it's being changed by this applicant?
No, it wouldn't.
I'll bring up a second thing too, because it kind of bakes into this a little bit. And something that kind of struck a chord in my head when I was thinking about the acoustic report. And I went back and I went online onto the township's website, and I read through the acoustic report, and it appears, and I'm asking the question, but it appears as though that sound report didn't meet the criteria of the zoning ordinance, because here's the result, and I'll read it. The sound plan predicted equivalent noise levels of the standard and maintenance operation scenarios are anticipated to range from approximately 47 to 70 dBA at the project boundary line. That would be the property line, correct? Right?
As far as I know, yeah.
So, and then it says, while the 67 dBA limit contour is predicted to cross the project boundary line, it says it does not extend to the boundary areas adjacent to residential, which isn't not in compliance, correct?
Which report are you reading?
That's why I'm asking. It's the one that's on the website. It's the one from the first submission. And then there's the second one, which updates it with different equipment, but now it's in compliance.
There have been equipment changes since the initial sound study, because they had revised the sound report based on the addition of those ultra-quiet fan packages for the chillers.
No,
So
I
at the
get
residential
that.
property boundary, the township zoning ordinance requires that it do not exceed 67 decibels for
Right.
adjacent to residential properties. For commercial properties, it does allow for a higher decibel reading. I believe it's 70 or 75. I'd have to look at the table, but it does allow for a higher decibel reading. So I know the initial sound study that was provided did comply with the township's, at least the noise levels that were projected in there complied with the township zoning ordinance. And since the studies have been updated as the equipment has been changed and it's gotten quieter.
It doesn't read that way. It doesn't read that it's only along the commercial lines. It just says, although the 60, and this is another paragraph at the end, although the 67 dBA contour is predicted to cross the project boundary under both scenarios, it does not extend into residential or agricultural areas, which I would assume to be those residential and agricultural property areas. So I'm bringing that to question, and the second one would be, I don't understand why if DTE is submitting, and they made it very clear at the last, because I was asking, show me some perspectives of the substation area. I was told that it's a separate submission, which it is, so they should be separate, right? So I don't know how this can update the last submission, which was approved for site plan. I don't know how you can do that. Procedurally, it seems like it needs to be updated, either resubmitted with an update, because right now, the way this reads to me, and maybe it needs to be reviewed by you, the way this reads to me is that it doesn't comply from the last one. And maybe this one can update it to comply, but that would mean that maybe the last one wasn't valid.
No, the last one was valid, and the last one did
Well, if
comply
it's
with our
not-
ordinance
if it's not
standards.
meeting the criteria, then it may not be.
I guess I would need to see what report you're pointing to.
Kimberly Horn report. It's this one. It says it twice.
What was the date of the Kimley Horn report?
Well, that's part of the question too. This date is January 21st, just before the last meeting. There's preliminary meeting.
Mhm.
So unless there's one between the 21st and February, what, 11th?
There was an updated sound map that was in the presentation that the applicant had made.
Right, but that's not what was in the report.
No, it was updated because they added the decibel readings for the quieter air chillers.
I guess what I'm saying is I'm just trying to check the procedure. If the document that supports that, I mean, if this document doesn't support what they said in the meeting, and this is what we were basing our decision on, it seems like it needs to go back and get updated, the original submission.
So you want to revisit the sound study?
Well, let's put it this way. I'll just use an example. I mean, we've had people resubmit because they didn't put the right finish on a building. You know, they had to go back. They couldn't get, like, as an example, maybe it's a little bit out of context, but we had a submission where, you know, they put the wrong siding on a building and they couldn't get final C of O. They had to go back and get permission to do it. So it feels like we need to procedurally update that last preliminary site plan approval.
Those items can get updated in final site plan approval. The power conditioning unit, so are you referring because the power conditioning units were replaced in the existing equipment
well,
yards?
it's more sequenced than anything. It's like the information that we receive that's in writing appears to not comply with the ordinance, even though it was given preliminary site plan approval. That's one thing. And then the second is that you have a second applicant different from this one because they're separate, trying to update the previous one.
That sound study was updated in our pack, and it was dated April the 16th.
Correct,
There
but
was an
but the thing is, what that's doing is updating the previous site plan approval for Cannoli, the hyperscale data center versus DTE. They're separate. I don't know why they're even submitting a sound study unless it's specifically for the DTE equipment, which they're saying is zero dBA because they're saying that the transformers are not part of it. They're off-site
No.
somewhere.
So
Is the submission?
You aren't scheduled to speak.
Excuse me.
Just
We haven't opened this,
I'm not scheduled. I'm a person. He's a developer attorney, not
excuse me. This is Planning Commission discussion time. It is not time for the public at this point. The question is brought up. We're looking for them for clarification. They have a right to step forward and clarify what's being said.
No, I'm not asking them the question. I'm asking, it's a procedural issue internally.
Clarification from them. Excuse me, folks. Excuse me. This is Planning Commission discussion time. We will open it to you, and you'll have your opportunities.
I mean, the short answer of it is, you know, the substation is a separate submittal. It's based on ITC. The power conditioning units are part of the function of the substation, and because of that, they can be brought forward as part of, you know, changes within the equipment yard. The Planning Commission certainly has the authority to approve it, and all of those changes are going to get reconciled in final site plan approval. So that is procedurally how this will all work. But the Planning Commission does have the authority to approve the changes. The
Makes sense that we're approving changes for a previous submission now. That's the thing. It logically doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying procedurally doesn't make sense that we're approving a previous preliminary site plan submission now. Why are we updating it with a different submission? They should be separate. That's my point.
Chair, I believe we're not looking at revisiting the preliminary site plan approval for
for the build, for the end user. What I believe has been resubmitted is the new sound study based on the new equipment.
But the thing is, that's modifying the first one, potentially. And the first one may be wrong to begin with, based on what I read.
And
Or
then
not
that would be
clear, let's put it that way.
It would be captured then at the final site plan.
But you're given preliminary site plan approval on something that may not even be correct, and giving them the ability to fix something while it shouldn't have gotten.
How do we know it's not correct?
Because I read it in here and it's not clear to me. I just read it. I don't know if maybe if you can clarify what's in the thing and says, yeah, well,
The way that I read the report, you're talking about the report from January 21st?
yep, there's two sentences
Specifically,
at the very end.
right. Although the 67 dBA contour is predicted to cross the project boundary under both scenarios, it does not extend into residential or agricultural areas. So the way that I read that, and I'm not a sound engineer, but the way that I read it means the 67 dBA does not cross the boundary that it is not supposed to cross.
But it could, okay, so it could cross a boundary, but not into residential boundaries, right? But it could go up to the road.
Correct.
Which is against the ordinance.
So
Super
when,
clear.
so maybe the summary in the report, and maybe Kimley Horn, if you ask, can clarify. When you read and look at the noise contour map, none of the contours, the 65 dBA contours, extend beyond the project limits in the residential agricultural areas. So if the conclusion is unclear, to me, when I look at the map, it is clear that those contour lines do not cross the boundary.
So to be clear, it makes sense that it might need to have some revision to it,
Sure.
right?
Sure, I would,
Which is now, based on what's going on, may be, which I wouldn't assume so, be invalid by what they're presenting today, which means it should get updated. The original preliminary, right?
you're saying the way the report is written or the study itself?
It feels like it's not clear that it originally met those requirements anyway.
I guess I can't speak on what your, whether you find it clear. When I look at the map, it's clear that it doesn't exceed the limits based on the zoning ordinance.
One last question for you then too is, the other smaller data center at the corner, which is not a hyperscale data center, they ended up having to come back with their acoustic report because they said that it did not include a plus or minus error of 3 dBA in their calculations. Would that apply to this as well, and did they mention that?
I wasn't.
The modeling is that, I mean, I work with acoustic engineers too, and there's sometimes these sound studies, they're not reality, but that's why they add the plus or minus 3 dBA into it. So I was just wondering if.
You're saying their sound engineers said that?
No, the report accounted for that in their sound study.
I guess I'm confused what you're asking.
I think there's what you're talking about is like a variance in the measurement, because the last sound report had a variance in the measurement of 1 to 2 dBA. So I think what we can do is we can ask the Kimley, plus or minus 3. So I think we could ask the Kimley Horn representatives to provide clarification on that.
But today's not the time to do that. Because we're talking about DTE and the substation, not about the cannoli project. Right? I'm confused.
Certainly, you can ask the Kimley Horn engineers that are here today if that factored into the sound study or not. You can't look at and again, please correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I don't believe you can look at, sound emitting equipment individually, especially when you have a site where some of these components work together. Because the sound does influence the other sound and how it travels and where it goes, and those sounds do maneuver. So I think you can't look at a sound study from a power conditioning unit independently of a chiller or a cooling tower. At least that's my understanding.
Well, so I have another question. That to be honest with you, when DTE, I like what they presented anyway with regard to their equipment, which is, you know, within the boundaries of their application, they say there's zero sound, basically, because they don't have transformers. That I understand. But when we head outside the boundary of that site, and we start talking about sound in other locations, it feels like it's the Panattoni side of things. That's where this thing gets a little messy. And then I have a follow-up too with the sound study. Over time, the equipment ages over time, right? Like fans, whatnot. And over time, they don't function as smoothly as they usually do. So I would ask you, in the study, did they account for the aging equipment and what the increase in decibels would be relative to that?
I didn't see anything in the report that accounted for aging equipment.
Now, the only reason I bring this up is because at the meeting when Panattoni was, made an application and we got to the motion, I had asked for a little additional time to fully understand the immense amount of information that was put in front of us. So that's why I'm asking it today, because I started reading through it in more detail to better understand it. So that's why you're getting these questions.
Through the chair. So this, again, might be procedural, maybe for you. My question is, and I think this is piggybacking on your line, can you build this data center, and you can answer this, can you build the Panattoni data center without building the substation?
No.
Why are they not combined as one submission if they are dependent upon each other?
Partly because they're different owners. It may be an overall development, but they're different owners of the different pieces. And that's the ITC owner was talking to that. And while there is some interplay, and that's what the sound study was done, and the sound study was updated at your request. That's why we had at the last meeting you had asked about that, and it was brought up. But the equipment itself isn't part of either of the approvals. It's the sound. The sound part is to meet. There isn't a requirement to have one certain piece of equipment or another certain piece of equipment. It's the sound. And that's the problem. And on your question of if they age, well, we're required to do continual sound monitoring. The township has the ability to do sound monitoring just like anything. And if there's a violation at any point, then that needs to be remedied. No sound study does that, doesn't project out that way. A thing could just break and it's going to make noise. That would be different. And so those are some of those are approaches. And to your bigger questions, right, this is just if there is the ability, the township's ordinance allows that, to have corrections or changes between, I mean, that's what even some of the conditions are, between the preliminary and final site plan. But this is just approving DTE's substation, their powering system, and that's what we're here for. That's
my point. He stated exactly my point.
Mr. Chairman, can I just have a question of the applicant. With some of these with some of these substation projects that work with some of the larger industrial projects I've worked on, I haven't, and again, and this may be just my experience, but I haven't seen any substations that were, especially when they're part of a larger industrial project, that were designed as part of the initial submittals of the project. They always come either afterwards or at a later phase. Is there some standard that ITC has or some level of commitment that ITC has where they won't commit to designing substations prior to certain approvals? I mean, I realize I haven't asked that question before, but that may not be a fair question, but this is how I've seen them play out before. So that was just a question.
That's correct. To go forward with the process here and entering into the agreements that were aforementioned from my colleagues at DTE, those are some of the requirements before we go forward with additional engineering. So we wanted to have the preliminary site plan and continue to go forward with this. And the reason for the noise study was at the request, I think, of Commissioner Jar about in the approval for the ultra quiet sound package. We wanted to reflect that into the noise study that was also requested from the commission here for this application. So any changes we have, and according to the McKenna report from February 11th, we're in compliance with all sound requirements on February 11th. We are in compliance with all sound requirements today. The only changes were made at the request of this commission here, and we wanted to make sure that was reflected into what was presented.
Thank you.
Just the, other than it not being clear, and then, you know, if we could go back in time, we'd say, would you please clarify it in your report? That's probably what we would do. The fact is now it's being changed. The preliminary site plan is being changed relative to the equipment next to the building, which was approved. I would think that now, if they take the current information, go back with the preliminary and ask for a change. The only other.
This isn't final, so they don't have to come forward with an amended site plan or amend their
No, I'm
site
not.
plan. They can make changes from preliminary to final, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct on that, Director Akers?
Yes, that's correct.
Since we are talking about the ITC DTE substation, this conversation then really is not necessary for our consideration.
So what you're saying is that they're already showing us what they're going to change on the preliminary for the final. That's what I'm hearing then, right?
That's what I would assume, is that they're going to make these changes and present it for final, and whether we accept it at final or not would be up to us.
Okay.
That's what I believe. Am I mistaken on that, Director Akers?
So you're saying that this is only for, the equipment's just, at this point, you're only going for the DTE stuff, then you're just providing additional information for the next round of final, is what I'm hearing then, which would make sense then.
Power conditioning units are required by DTE and ITC
No, I
for
get
that to
that.
function, right? So that is a part of this preliminary site plan.
The DTE plan is required for the building to function.
Again, they're tied together, and that's
but
what we've
there's-
demonstrated today.
Okay,
So it is a part of this approval.
okay.
Um,
No, I see where you're going with this. So it's going to end up being, the modification that's being shown now is going to be shown for final site plan. So I do have a question, some additional questions that are not related to that. One second. So with regard to, you know, I think it's easy to say that any development that comes into our community, you know, that benefits the developer and anyone that's operating it monetarily, et cetera, should not negatively impact in any way its surrounding neighbors, specifically and especially residential. I think it's safe to say we'd all would agree to that.
Yes.
So I think my line of questioning is going to be based along some of those items that maybe not particularly are written verbatim in the zoning ordinance, because there's a lot of things that aren't in the zoning ordinance that can greatly impact people that live next to a development. So some of this stuff is just going to be, you know, for the applicant. Can I address the applicant then? I just want to make sure that this DTE, basically this DTE site, that it's providing power solely for the hyperscale data center. Is that true? Solely for them. So yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Adam Kramer for the record, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there going to be any intent for any future modification of this to include any kind of best battery energy storage systems in any way?
There'll be no modifications to what's presented.
Or the SMR? So it's going to be like that for the.
There will be no SMR, as we mentioned in the last one.
I'm just saying it again.
I know, I think it's a good question. I just want to make sure it's like, we will reiterate for the
And
record.
I ask it again is because that last go-around wasn't for you. It was for the data center, not for DTE. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thank you.
And then I want to go, you know, maybe talk about the aesthetic side of things a little bit.
I have one question, piggybacking on your last question.
Sure, go ahead.
So, talking about like future expansions, future changes. So this technology is extremely new. Obviously, the not the substation, but the chips, and they're going to continue to change. They're going to continue to get better. Over the last decade or so, we've seen the power need for these chips just skyrocket. If the data center changes out its chips in the future, will there be any expansion of this site to provide more power for that facility?
There's no plans for that at all.
Is that guaranteed? Is that in writing? Is that?
I won't be the owner, but no, I mean, there's no plans. This is the transformer, or the switching station, excuse me, is limited to 1 gigawatt of capacity. That is what it will serve. And so there's no plans for it.
So we can make his answers part of the record, right? For the motion?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes,
And same for the presentation? Okay, just want to
Absolutely,
make
it's
sure.
all in the record.
Okay.
On the record.
Are you?
Chair?
Yeah. But
Go ahead, go ahead.
Some aesthetic questions, I think you answered some of them with regard to heights. Is there any concern about the 150-foot poles with regard to the airport in any way? Just curious about that one.
As we finish the design on those, it will go through a FAA permitting
Okay.
process as required.
So the other thing, just a crazy question, because there's a lot of trees being taken down along 94. Do you have anything to do with the poles that were erected? You know, they look like power poles. Is that anything related to this project anyway with supplying power? How are you bringing the main lines to the site? Is that from the east?
ITC will be bringing in those lines underground from the west.
From the west, okay. So where's the path from the west?
No, great question. So, I mean, at the moment, we are assessing options because, as you're aware, we do have a corridor that is to the west of this proposed site. And so ITC is currently assessing the best option that is going to be least impactful to the community.
So how many, you said you have a corridor coming from the west. Do you own those currently?
It's the current corridor that's running currently with the towers, the high voltage towers.
So where is it going? Which way is it going? East?
I'm sorry, and I mean to the west of the proposed cannoli site.
Right, it's coming from the west of the cannoli site, but where is it relative to north-south running to the cannoli site?
At this moment, that's still being.
Shot, or it's going to be curved, or what does that look like? Because a straight shot is straight through the subdivision.
Yeah, no, and certainly at the moment, we do not have the final designs or even final route to even speak on, because it's still being assessed.
So I'll ask a direct question. Is there a chance that it could run right through the subdivision?
So that subdivision, meaning to the west of?
Subdivision, right, that entire subdivision, which is bounded by the service drive and just not quite all the way to Tyler Road. I mean, that's your corridor lies in there somewhere, right?
No, well, right now, we don't have anything final to even say. But as it relates, if the concern is to disrupt the community, that certainly would be an option that would be least favorable. But I just can't give you any different.
Is there a chance it could run through the subdivision?
I cannot really say.
Is there a chance it could run through the subdivision? If it's an easy no. If there's not a chance. Okay.
he's just saying he isn't aware of the situation at this point where they're going to go.
Well, is there any way that can be part of the approval or not? Or is it, if they own I guess if they own an easement, which is saying you own an easement that runs east-west, or you're still looking for one?
That is still being assessed.
So they don't have one yet, is what I'm hearing.
Am I correct that eminent domain is able to be used for energy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, okay, so I won't answer. I'll ask a different question. It's kind of in the same direction. It's going to be, are you going to disturb any land within the subdivision? I mean, I think the answer, I mean, it's clear to me. It's like, he doesn't know, but it's a possibility is what I'm hearing that. So, because I would, if I'm evading the question, that means it's a possibility.
Well, through the chair, I think if we, and if ITC can listen to the committee here, commission, that I-94 service drive runs from those high-powered transmission lines that you own. You have to curve a little bit, but you can avoid the residential area And I don't see any way that you would burrow through underground through the subdivision. I mean, I'm not a
Then-
power guy,
then-
so.
then say no.
But there's a way.
Then say no.
It's not saying no, but he doesn't have the plan. He can't say yes because he doesn't know what the plan is.
Ability. So we're
Probably
we're
doesn't
past
have
that.
the authority to make that decision.
I know, that's not that's not my question. It's not, do you have the authority? It's, is it a possibility? That's an easy answer.
Have the authority, he can't go either direction with it because I
And
understand
miss him.
what his position is.
My concern would be that that's what we're looking at here, is kind of fleshing out those concerns, and if he's not able to answer those questions, then I would like them to come back and answer those.
Yeah,
at
I
a
would
later
agree
time.
with that. I would agree. That's fair too. I think that's fair. So, yeah, come back, because that's a huge disturbance. Okay, so that's, I don't mean to dwell on that. So I'll move on. I think you talked a little bit about, I'm just curious, I mean, more of curiosity from the for DTE. What is the voltage that's running through this substation? I mean, I'm not an engineer from that standpoint, so, I mean, at any one time, how much voltage is running through this equipment from it being energized? Is it equal to what it uses?
So the voltage that is running in the corridor that ITC was referencing to the west, those are 345 kilovolt lines, 345 kV. That's what will be brought into the switchyard. How many? At the end, it will be 4 lines via 2 paths.
So four lines and 2 paths. Okay.
So 345 kV into the switchyard. DTE's overhead lines will be 345 kV.
When it's on site, though, you're saying.
On site.
Okay, but to get there, it's all underground, right?
Yeah, ITC is going to be underground between the corridor and the switchyard.
Okay.
And then DTE's overhead will be 345 kV.
Yeah.
The customer will be stepping that down at their substations to 34.5 kV, which is a standard distribution voltage throughout the country.
So just, again, just an education. So when you're saying 3 or 4 345 kVs? 4?
4.
So do you add those up when they get there? Or is that like, I don't know how that works.
Switchyard is kind of what allows everything to tie together.
Okay, so that's, okay, about 1,400 kVA was what? That's
No,
not how it works?
It's voltage is a singular level there.
Okay.
And then the usage is that gigawatt.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I'll bring something else up. So it sounds like, again, are you, I think you're the one. So no noise. So no noise. So it's like one of the biggest concerns from these substations, whatever you want to call it, is that there's a lot of vibrations from, and I guess it's mainly, you mentioned before, it's mainly from transformers. So at this point, there's not going to be any humming at all. No humming.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, if you want to tag team this with me a little bit, the ITC switchyard does not have transformers.
Okay.
The customer substations will have the transformers further in the site, and that was in their noise study.
How far in the site are they? Where, I just.
35 feet.
Yeah,
is their-
they're outside of the substation area, right, is what you're saying? Okay. So they're further back into the site.
Yeah,
So-
they're right next to each
Okay.
building.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, let's see. So I guess that has to do with the transformers. That's, okay, so I am going to bring up something that obviously, and you can speak to it and maybe minimize everybody's concern, but obviously with these substations, and this is not, your typical substations, 9-acre substation. And by the way, I did take a look at the one in Canton. It looks like this one's way bigger. From the standpoint of acreage, maybe not, but if you look at the equipment on the one in Canton, this is like 4 times that, if not more. And you're probably familiar with it, right? It's called the Wayne, I think it's called the Wayne substation. So if you had to say, as far as equipment, what's the times how many of that Wayne substation is this?
I honestly would not compare the two because the Wayne station has transformers.
Right.
That feed out into the community.
Yeah.
So it steps down transmission voltage and steps down distribution voltage.
Yeah. I was just looking at all the rigging and the smaller equipment, more so than the transformers, but.
Yeah, I mean, that one is built within
Yeah.
the transmission corridor. So it appears smaller versus the towers that the transmission lines are on there.
So I want to jump into a couple of things that, I mean, I took advantage of not so much AI, but the internet, just like everybody does. I guess that's why we have data centers. But there's, I want to speak to low frequency EMFs. I'm sure you were ready for that one.
Say that again, low frequency what?
Low frequency EMFs. It's the
Thank you.
low frequency magnetic field stuff. So this is just to satisfy everybody's, and it's going to come, it would have come up. So, there have been studies done, and it kind of goes both ways a little bit. There have been studies done that somehow at times potentially can link childhood leukemia to some of these EMFs and other neurological type neurological and cognitive effects based on these EMFs for just, people sleeping, having problems sleeping, having headaches, whatnot. So what I'm looking from you, and I'm sure all the neighbors are that live across the street from this, which is, again, probably a 9-iron away from their house, for those that can't swing very well. So what I'm looking for you, both maybe DT and Cannoli, is assurance that this will not be a health issue to the residents in the area. And not just, hey, yeah, we don't think it's going to be a problem. I wouldn't even have any problem with you putting in writing or maybe making your answer part of this motion moving forward. So I'd like you to speak to that.
Yeah, so good evening, Mr. Chair and Commission. My name is Glenn Patoa. I'm a PhD and a subject matter expert in field effects and audible noise with ITC Holdings. So I can speak about the substation specifically. So your question about EMF, it's understood, and I think there's a lot of conflicting information that you'll find, especially when you mention using EI and searching the internet. The cleanest way to answer the question is to lean on the organizations that are responsible for public health. So the National Cancer Institute, the National Environmental Health Sciences, World Health Organization, and portion of theirs, which is the International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation, as well as Health Canada, and so on.
Yeah.
Many of these organizations that are responsible for public health have been studying this question that's been around since the 1970s. So they've been looking at the full body of research. Every year there's some 150 plus papers studying these effects, trying to find a causal effect between low frequency EMFs and some negative health concerns. So each one of these organizations all report findings that are very similar in nature. And to paraphrase, it's some form of that despite looking at all the research, looking at the full body of research, they're not able to find a causal effect from low frequency EMF and negative health effects.
But I did read a lot of that where it's kind of both ways. There's certain researchers, whatever you want to call them, testers, whatever you want to call them, that believe it is the case. Maybe it's isolated at times. But there is on your side basically the same thing where they say, but it's not really an issue because there's not enough evidence, until there is, right? So I guess my question to you is, what is your opinion? Do you believe that it doesn't cause any health effects based on what you read in your research and understanding?
Yeah, so I've spent, of course, a lot of time reading the research.
Yep.
I've developed my understanding and my opinion.
Yep.
I would suggest that probably the most fruitful conversation here is to not myself provide my opinion, but rather to lean on the experts that are responsible for public health, right? These are and it's important to highlight that the organizations are able to convene a large group of scientists who can focus on epidemiology, who can focus on animal research, and who have focus on cellular biology and the physics. So they're able to convene large groups of people with all this very deep expertise and look at the full body of research. So it's important for me to highlight, right? And I will be humble and say that I don't feel that in my place, I can second guess what they have concluded when they look at the full body. So I lean on their guidance on that. And so I think that would be probably the most fruitful approach in this case.
No,
One quick question that maybe can clarify. What generates the low-frequency EMF?
So the low-frequency EMF is a result of current, right? Anywhere that there's a flow of current, anywhere there's a flow of electricity, there will be magnetic fields. So we say EMF, technically that means electric and magnetic fields. Colloquially, that means magnetic fields, right? When we talk about the health discussion. So anytime there's current that exists, right? These lights in the room, the TVs, anytime there's current flowing, there's a magnetic field that's generated. So the analysis of the substation shows that at the fence line of the substation, inside of the project area, the expected magnetic field is 1.7 milligauss. If you extend that to the area where the public has access, so the fence line that's along Haggerty Road, that's expected to be 1.3 milligauss. Now, in comparison, the National Environmental Health Sciences has looked at common exposures that people see in their residential houses, in their workplaces, and they find that that is well within the range of what you would see in your everyday life. And just for example, like if you were to use a hair dryer, you would expose yourself to, according to their research, 300 milligauss. If you use a toaster or a coffee maker, it's 7 milligauss, right? So there's this wide range of magnetic field levels that you would experience in your everyday life. And this is less than those.
So it sounds like you're not sure, 100%, which would mean there is a risk, but, well, I mean, he's saying, yeah, probably not, but.
Like,
thing is, I got.
Closer to the overhead power lines than what this is, and
Well, the thing is,
none of my family has experienced any problems.
I'm just saying there's a risk, right? Right now, there's no risk. Now there's going to be a risk. That's all I'm saying. So I would say that wherever that path of that line is, just take into account that there is residents in the area. And if this kilovolt, 4 lines of 345 kilovolts each add up to a point where it could potentially be a problem, just be aware of that, because I'm sure that'll come up. So I just have some last things, and actually the noise is a non-issue. I just want to bring up one last thing because it was brought up, and it's probably just a statement more than anything, but it was brought up during the cannoli presentation at the very end that, this is awesome for the neighborhood, it's going to help your property values, which is actually not true. I did go online, and there was, especially related to power lines, not so much data centers, but they're attached to it, I guess. So it says multiple studies suggest properties near power lines suffer price depreciation due to health concerns and aesthetic factors. And it goes into it a little bit more. And it says home buyers tend to perceive power lines as unattractive or associate them with health risks, influencing market demand and long-term property investment returns. It's just life, right? So my point being is that when this data center is built and these power lines are in here, this power equipment in here is not going to lend to improving the residential homeowners' value of their homes. In my opinion, reading this and understanding it, and anybody using common sense would say, probably would not be my first choice, and it's probably not going to allow home values to appreciate the same rate it is now, given the fact that there is not this huge industrial complex and a 9-acre substation across the street that they could hit a 9-iron to. So I'm just saying, I think in all, I think this has a large negative effect on the surrounding residential area, and it probably, I'm not against the progress of data centers. I think they'd be awesome, really. But you have to ask the question, is it really the right place to drop one of these things in the middle of a residential area? It's surrounded by residential, and even on one side, there's a community college, and that's going to be in operation, all year long. So I mean, my bottom line is it's not the right place. I think data centers are great further away, but I fully understand why they are where they are. There's a power line corridor there, and it's not far enough away from you. It's close to utilities enough where there's open land. The last thing that anybody wants to do is go further away from utilities, because now you have to look at groundwater and possibly paying for the extension of utilities. So I'm done.
Commissioners, other comment?
Through the chair. So my question is about decommissioning. And again, I mentioned this earlier. I can go a little further. So I read an article, I think it was in Bloomberg. 50% of all data centers that have been proposed in the last year have either been delayed or canceled. And tying back to what we just learned, that they go hand in hand. We can't have one without the other. Does that mean, one, does this have to be built first?
Kramer, for the record, these will be built simultaneously. Adam Kramer, for the record, these will be built simultaneously.
Okay, so thank you for that. So long term, let's say this shuts down. The data center shuts down. 100% of all decommissioning costs are going to be covered by Google. Because if this is the only facility that this substation is serving, and that's no longer there, then we just have a 9-acre substation or switcher just sitting there right across from a residential neighborhood.
There are a couple of components to that. One of the DT agreements has some decommissioning aspects to it that was read to you. The other is we're still working.
I think you mentioned 80% in the presentation. Okay, so that means DT is covering the other 20%?
Yes, and the other is, as far as I understand, I'm with the developer, so we probably should have the DT come up. The other is that we are still working on the development agreement with the township, and part of that is in the flux of some of the sections and the discussions that we have had on that. The other is when and if that were to happen, and actually the 50% number is somewhat incorrect that you were citing. 24 projects last year didn't go forward. That was it.
Michigan or nationwide?
Nationwide.
Okay. I'll check on that.
It just came out in the Construction Today article came out today. You can read it. The other is that any building could cease to be used.
Right. That's why. But again, we're looking at long-term planning here. 100%.
And that's correct. But there's a couple things I think, and all of the thoughts and questions are good, and they're good thoughts. They aren't set forth, and I know this isn't popular, but they aren't set forth in the law. They aren't set forth in the ordinance. The site plan.
So since Google is a massive company, would they be willing to make that commitment to us?
Certain things. I'm not Google.
Okay.
I'm not.
Thank you.
We are the developer. What we are here today is preliminary site plan approval. There is a specific steps that need to be made. Staff has both the reports have said that the requirements have been met, and based on that, and it actually says subsection C shall be approved. It isn't a discretion from you in that aspect.
Can I ask, would you say that increased electricity bills because of costs being passed on decommissioning is not a burden? Because in our ordinance, it says we should not approve anything that causes a burden on the residents.
Yep, so absolutely. The way the deal is structured between DTE and Google, like Barbara mentioned, there are termination penalties or fees that Google would have to pay to DTE to offset any and all costs of removing equipment. I do want to clarify the ITC station that they're building is an interconnected network station, so it's through going. So those lines come from the south, they go to the north, they continue up to that Wayne station. So we're essentially cutting that into that existing corridor. If the data center were to cease operation at some point in the future, that can be undone and put back to the system it is now.
And it will be paid 100% by the applicant?
Yeah, that's part of the termination penalty.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'm okay right now. Oh, just one more clarification. We talked on this earlier. No expansion of the acreage for this site. Were they going to be adding battery energy storage, no SMRs? I did hear that no SMRs, just clarifying on the battery energy.
As far as ITC and DT go, no, that's the bounds of the switchyard. There's no room for further expansion beyond that. And we are not putting any utility storage or generation anywhere on the site.
And again, maybe this is my confusion with looking at two separate things as one, but not as one. Will Google be looking at adding those battery energy storages to their site? Because I understand that you have this small substation and that of a larger property. And I hear you that you're saying it won't be on the substation. Will Google be doing that on the rest of their facility?
As far as you're asking about battery energy storage?
Yes.
So we're presenting on the power conditioning units, a component of that is batteries. So that is all regulated under IFC 1207 and FPA 855.
So if there's batteries then, I know that the Michigan Public Service Commission sets standards and regulates BESS, we'll call it BESS, over a certain megawattage. Is it going to exceed that threshold? And then in other words, does that mean that this decision will then be made by, a bureaucratic agency outside of the township?
No, this is all within standard and within the codes that are set forth.
Okay. Is that in writing? I understand like codes, but again, what we're concerned about here is, we want good corporate partners. Are you willing to make those commitments? If it's not, would you go above and beyond our code for the benefit of the community and commit to that?
Trying to make sure I understand the question.
There's concerns about expanding the footprint past what we already saw last time. Will battery energy be added maybe between now and final site plan, after final site plan, when it's already up and running as an expansion?
Anything that would be added between now and final site plan will come before you. And you would see that and have the ability to make decisions based on that. What can happen in the future? Anything can happen in the future with this or any project. And we can't, nor are you permitted to, and I hate talking like this, but it's the law to say that, to restrict, say that you'll never be able to expand. We don't do that for a homeowner. We don't do that for somebody who's building a strip mall unless they've pushed up to the requirement, the setbacks, the square footage that's allowed. We can't commit. That we're committing is this is what we're proposing. It meets all of the requirements. It meets all of your questions right now. And that's really all that we can do, and that's all that the approval and the review process does do.
Say you won't expand. There's no law that says you can't say it.
There's no law that says that I can't actually commit to a future owner.
That you potentially, are they allowed to split the property?
As part of the development agreement and the township ordinances, we are combining it onto one tax parcel.
Right. Any
tax split would have to come back before the township if it was ever to be allowed, and the assessor and planner and everybody is involved in that. And we're committing at this point that we are, and before site plan, we have to submit the application for lot combination. It's actually one of the terms of the development agreement we're working on.
I was confused by when you mentioned future owner.
Well, anything could be, any piece of property could be sold and could be sold. You could sell your house. I can sell my house.
Well, I think the question was though, while it's under current ownership, not future ownership though. That's why I got a little lost. I think is it true that you mean current ownership is not going to expand building or anything on site? That's what I think he was asking.
I don't know that, we can't commit to that right now. We don't know with your question about the future is we don't know what the future will hold
I
and
I can
hold.
clarify. So there's not a phase 2 that's being drafted right now.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay,
I mean, not to be confused with the development agreement, what we have proposed does have 4 phases, but that's the buildings being built in phases, but nothing that you don't know about as a new phase. That's what I mean. No, nothing on that level. No,
So
not
I'm
at all.
sure, I'm sure we'll ask that question again. Just thought I'd let them know.
Commissioners?
Anything else?
I mean, just to, through the chair, just to clarify, if there's any change in 15 years from now, after Google's been here, and they want to go anything that's above and beyond what's already been approved through this commission, they're going to have to come before us again. So if they introduce battery energy storage devices, we just worked on an ordinance on that, right? So that will have to come through this commission to get approved and make sure that they're abiding by our ordinances. So I just want to assure that we have protections in place, at least, I mean, I can be corrected by staff, that will prevent future expansion, for lack of a better word, with our ordinances without being approved by the township.
But
My
I don't-
opinion.
I don't know if it stops, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, now it turned on. If the equipment yards expand, if new buildings are proposed, if there's building expansions or additions, if any of those things happen, those would of course have to go through the site plan approval process. They would have to come through the planning commission.
And
they
so
would
will
have to meet
battery energy
whatever.
storage units as well, right? Yeah.
I think that, pardon me, through the chair, but I think what you were referring to was the project in its entirety, because what Ron is saying essentially is potentially they could come back and expand their buildings,
But they
period,
have to
on the
come
same
through us,
site.
right.
I know, but by right, by square footage, they can pretty much do what they want then, because they already have the approval of this, unless they introduce a use that's different than what the site allows. That's the only way we would have it. You can't stop them from adding square footage.
No, you couldn't stop them from adding square footage. They would have to meet whatever our current standards were at the time
That's just
that they
my point. I
applied.
wanted to-
So as we're working through and updating our codes, we can update our codes and they would have to meet whatever those current standards would be.
And I think just from the energy storage systems, we worked on, I think, one of the few municipalities in the state that they took the initiative initially about battery energy storage and recommended that our township board pass an ordinance, and I believe it passed, to protect our township. So I think we've got some protection in place, is what the point I wanted to make.
Yeah, I think
So-
that's true. I just want to be clear, though. That doesn't mean they can't cut more trees down and add more building.
Well, I mean, I think we've got it,
Are you going to maintain the land and the development as is without expanding on what the current plan is? Other than the phasing, I understand
Can
that.
I clarify one super quick thing that I think is both? Battery energy storage in our ordinance is special land use, correct?
So off-site battery storage is special land use. If it is ancillary to a permitted use, it is considered a permitted use.
Oh, that's interesting.
Commissioners, anything else?
Oh, yeah, I'm usually the one,
waiting-
Mr. Chairman.
I was waiting for you to raise your hand, Commissioner
I wanted to
Jar.
make sure that, typically in these meetings, if you've been to them before, you know I'm the long-winded one.
Uh-huh.
And I go on, and I ask a lot of questions. I wanted to make sure that the easy questions were done first.
Okay.
No, I had a couple of questions about the equipment. In a previous meeting, a resident, Tracy Osborne, and Peter Pompo, and some others, asked about the difference between the sound study and vibration concerns, pointing out that there's a difference between audible sound and inaudible sound. My question for Mr. Chairman, any of the power engineers is any of that substation equipment, switching equipment, is it expected to make any kind of vibrational energy that may be detectable at the property line. How's that?
Yeah, so I can speak to the substation specifically, not to the power units and some of these other elements, right? So it's important to highlight, and I think I think Jeremy did a really good job of explaining it, but I think it's helpful to reiterate that when most people experience a substation, or they think about a substation, they actually think about the transformer or reactors that they hear, or, and you're asking about vibration, there's enough energy in those that they could potentially have vibrations into the ground if they're not properly isolated. This substation does not have transformers inside of the substation. It does not have reactors inside of the substation. So that kind of the line of questioning aligns with, I think, where you're going with that. The equipment that's in here are circuit breakers, right? Similar to what's in your house, just on obviously a significantly larger scale. So they don't operate in a regular fashion. If they operate and they open, they would make a noise. But of course, that's important and necessary to preserve the integrity of the grid or the electrical system, right? So the switches and circuit breakers that are present are not actively operating in that manner, right? So hopefully that answers your question.
It does, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, another resident asked in a meeting, Monique Kurkowski asked if there was to be any evaporative plumes coming from any of the equipment on the site, be that a chiller, a PCU, a battery, a generator, or a switching yard. Is there expected to be any kind of visible smoke coming from this site now that we've had a chance to design the switching station? I would ask that of any of the members that were here tonight, sir.
Anyone that has that
Mr. Chairman,
information, that knowledge.
Of the
that's what-
applicant and their
yes.
team, please. The professionals, please.
To the application that's before us today related to the switching station and the power conditioning units, there are no evaporative plumes.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about power conditioning units. Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if one of the power professionals could answer, is a power conditioning unit considered a battery?
A battery is a part of a power conditioning unit. There's 5 components that make it up. There's HVAC equipment, there's fire alarm detection equipment, there's electrical equipment that ties all this together, which is how it communicates with the electrical grid.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not a high-power electrical engineer. Technically, I'm more of a computer engineer. I have UPSs on my systems at home that condition the power that I get from DTE so that it's suitable for my computers. When the DTE power goes out, my computers stay running. Is that what the purpose of a PCU is in this design?
Mr. Jar, you have it correct.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, guys, I do have a lot. I apologize. I have, Mr. Chairman, a question for our engineering consultant. Very simple question. Does the sound study submitted by Kimley Horn on April 17, 2026 indicate that the design will likely be compliant with our noise ordinances? In your opinion, as our consulting engineer.
Based on what they presented, including the new power conditioning units and the low, or the quieter fan cooling towers, it does comply currently, as shown in the April 17th report.
Mr. Chairman, I have a follow-on question for our engineer. And I apologize, I think it was your coworker had answered this at one point. Do you, as a consulting firm Fishbeck, have the ability on staff to assess those type of sound reports, or do you rely on any outside consulting when you have concerns about a sound report?
We on staff do not have acoustic engineers, and we do rely on sub-consultants when the need is brought up.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask, does Fishback have an opinion as to whether or not the need is brought up, and should a external verification of the sound report be performed by our consulting team? I ask this because, and I regret I didn't write the name down at the time, another member of the public asked, well, how do we know that our consulting engineer understands the sound report? Someone asked, so I'm.
That is?
I am terribly sorry, Commissioner. I can't identify who it was.
Not you.
I didn't write down the name. Oh, you mean who do they consult with?
Yeah, well, we've consulted with many different companies throughout our different offices, more local versus if we have offices in Ohio. Previously, we have used Soundscape Engineering out of Plymouth. The thought on baseline and talking with Director Akers and the applicant is, once their final configuration of power units, cooling, all of that, they will package it together. We will take that. We will reach out to a separate independent sub-consultant who will review it and go through the whole process. So prior to us and our portion being final engineering, we would have that sub-consultant look at it and give their opinion on the reports.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take that as a yes. They're planning on getting it verified, which I thank you. I think that's a great idea in this one. Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the DTE or ITC engineers. I am trying to understand what a switching station is or what a substation is. I am not sure that the professionals who are here this evening are aware of the Morton substation, which is located very nearby the applicant's site. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask if any of the DTE representatives here are familiar with the Morton substation, if they could tell me whether that substation is a switching substation or a substation. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the full technical. I know one of them switches and has transformers, one doesn't. What's Morton substation? That's my question, Mr. Chairman, I apologize.
I'll certainly take another swing at this. So Morton is what we call a general purpose distribution substation. That site steps down the transmission voltage, which is 120 kV at that site, steps it down to 13.2 kV, which then goes out to the circuits in the area. Again, a switching station brings multiple lines in and then just kind of all interties them, just like a junction box in a home or business.
Mr. Chairman, could the gentleman clarify the Morton substation has transformers?
Morton does have transformers. It has two distribution transformers.
And a switching substation is expected to be more quiet than a substation with transformers. Is that a true statement? Could the gentleman answer?
Correct, that is true.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to get them all out of the way. I'm real close, I promise. I'm real close. My understanding, Commissioner Grant brought up a good point about this being a preliminary site plan approval for a site that is a single site. And we've already done a preliminary site plan approval. I have some procedural question as to why it maybe shouldn't have been done as a preliminary site plan amendment. But my understanding or my recollection from previous meetings, Mr. Chairman, is that it wasn't clear at the time we were doing the original preliminary site plan review exactly what the parcel ownership was going to be, whether the substation would be wholly owned by a DTC or a ITC or a DTE. I guess my understanding, my recollection was that the ownership model wasn't quite settled yet, and it wasn't clear whether the substation would be handled on a different parcel, and that led, my recollection is that led to there being a breakout of the preliminary approvals. My question for the applicant is, has the ownership of the land been settled, and are we now looking at one complete site?
Adam Kramer for the record. Yes, it will be one site ownership now is where it did settle down.
Okay. I'm really getting down to the bottom of it here, too. I want to, I think I made it clear in one of the other site plan reviews, where it wasn't being announced who the ultimate customer was, that before there was any final site plan approval, we were going to need to know that. I see that this preliminary site plan approval was, I'm kind of in Commissioner Grant's camp, that this should have been handled as a single site plan. It probably should have been handled as a site plan amendment, because it confuses the issue for our final site plan review of the entire project. Because if we approve something on this site plan and it is not congruous with the previous site plan, there could be a conflict there. So I want to draw the attention to our planning staff that should this preliminary site plan approval move forward, if we get this to a final site plan approval, I will expect to see the differences between the first approved site plan, this site plan, and what is finally presented. Normally, we only have to see the differences between what was approved on the preliminary and what was presented for final. But procedurally, because this was handled differently, I'm going to request from staff that you make it very clear exactly what the two changes are, because on the Planning Commission, our responsibility is to make sure that the preliminary site plan is consistent with the final site plan. And if the two site plans are inconsistent in any way, I don't know which site plan I need to be reviewing. So we'll need some help with that. I think we'll need some help with that.
Through the chair, could I follow up on that?
Mr. Chairman, I don't mind if the commissioner wants to comment on that.
So I would agree with that, where it confuses. Are these new power units in or out of this submittal? That's the thing, because the way I view this is whatever's bounded by the substation boundaries is what's in the submittal. That's how I see it. But then they also talked about high power lines, but.
Mr. Chairman, I'd comment that my feeling on it is, because this is a procedural, I guess I understand how we got to this place. We thought it was going to be two separate parcels. We thought it was going to be two separate applications. The applicant has since moved it into a single large site. It doesn't change the fact that we already did a site plan approval when it wasn't that way,
But we
right?
still have two separate applications, right?
Understanding is that this will all be under one application going forward. Mr. Chairman, I was hoping Director Akers could answer that.
Yeah, when?
So after final engineering is completed and the permitting is completed between the county and our final engineering review, and based on our discussions with the applicant, both applications are going to come back together for final site plan approval. So you're not going to see a separate final site plan approval. It will all come back at the same time for consideration by the Planning Commission.
As two separate items?
No, we'd probably combine both applications into one item.
Is that not considered a new application?
We could consider both applications under the same decision, and they could be considered under the same set of plans.
Wouldn't they be separate in that one then?
I don't think so, no. They could be considered on the same set of plans as part of the same approval.
Mr. Chairman, I would direct, if I could, suggest to staff that we get the details of that worked out well in advance of the meeting, whether that needs to be a one-step preliminary site plan approval of the combined two as allowed by our ordinance, or another site plan approval meeting for the entire thing as allowed by our ordinance, or, just a minute, or, please, sir, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mean to.
No, you've got the floor.
Yeah, I would like staff to make it clear, and, I understand Commissioner Grant's confusion by it. I had the same issue. How does this work procedurally? Please clear up the procedure so that it's clear and it's in line with our ordinances, would be my request before this comes to us again. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to make a comment that this is preliminary. This doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, completely in line with what we're looking for. For example, I don't see these towers on the plan anywhere. I don't see the easement for the underground power coming into the switching yard. I'm not clear exactly what those towers or poles are supposed to look like. I don't see their elevations. I see that there's an easement on the plan for overhead power lines, but I don't see a design for them. I would expect that in any single site that had its own personal private substation, I would expect there to be some documentation on the plan showing where the overhead power lines are, where the easements for power are, and really what the design of the site plan is. That, when that comes to final site plan approval, that information needs to be on there. It isn't enough for our fire marshal to say, well, I want to have assurance from the applicant that the power lines won't interfere with the fire truck. Just like showing turning radiuses for fire equipment on the plan, I want to see on the plan what the clearance is for those overhead power lines with regard to the fire truck. The fire marshal shouldn't have to guess. It should be on the plan. That is really all I had to say. I think that the other commissioners covered a lot of my concerns. Thank you, gentlemen, for being thorough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me speak.
Anybody else? Comments here?
Through the chair. Yes. One question, going back to the beginning, and if I missed this, just please correct me. Was the sound study completed on only the substation and the facility separate? Was there a sound study that considered both of them cumulatively?
Yeah, the sound study is comprehensive for the entire site.
Okay, thank you for that.
Which is considered the final sound? Is it the final one you had mentioned? That there would be one that would pull everything together? I'm not sure what that meant.
The sound study took what was on the previous data center approval and added the elements from this application to it so that you could get the entire campus sound.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. And then two other quick ones, and then I think I'm done. I'm sorry. Maybe three. So first, quick, does this require any Wayne County permits?
Drainage.
Wayne County permits are required for all the civil work.
Okay. And then please confirm or help me understand. So this is like a standalone, it only helps for this facility. The power is only for this facility. But then you mentioned that there's other tie-in lines that, you know, kind of extend to the rest of the grid. Is this going to affect the reliability of the grid anywhere else?
Yeah, so the DTE lines going from the ITC yard to the customer are only for the customer. The transmission lines that are getting cut in from the existing corridor, like I said, those continue to be through going. Operationally, that does improve the reliability of the transmission system because it allows another point for the system to operate if there is a fault, a down line, something like that. So, for example, let's say 10, 20 miles down the road, down 275 where lines are coming from, something happens and one of those wires comes down. Right now, that fault is going all the way up to the Wayne station, and operations could occur at either end, either to the south or the north. With that site being cut in there, being networked, it allows another point for the system to flex and reheal.
Okay. Next question. So when power goes down and like restoration, I know there's kind of like a priority where, you know, first is like hospitals and, you know, public safety. Where do data centers or where does this facility fit in that priority compared to residential and other commercial facilities? Is there any agreement with DTE that this jumps the line at all?
So that is a really good question, and I'm going to answer two sides of this. One is within the domain. Yep, sorry. So two pieces of this. One is, like Barbara mentioned, there's a demand response agreement that we have with Google, where if we get into a regional event that would be called by our the broader operating authority, and they say, hey, ITC, DTE, you need to decrease power consumption. they are interrupted first. They are voluntarily saying, we will interrupt several hundred megawatts of our usage to prevent DTE having to manually interrupt customers. So
The
that-
data center
yep.
reduces their draw. Okay, thank
Yep. So that is one piece. The broader question around restoration. So when we have a storm event, like we had, I think was it 2 weeks ago, we had some storms in the area, tornadoes. You kind of have to look at them as a little bit separated. Being connected to the transmission system, like I said, that you could have a transmission line go down 10, 20, 30 miles away, and there is redundancy built into that transmission system. If there is an outage caused from the transmission system, restoring that is going to fix tens of thousands of customers at once. On the residential subdivision commercial level, the community level, it's completely separate. DTE crews that are fixing power lines in the subdivision across the street, up and down Haggerty, wherever, are different crews. Those are the overhead and underground linemen that pull out of our Western Wayne Service Center there in Haggerty. Customer-owned substation, they are responsible for maintenance and operations there. So it's, they really don't play into our restoration priority strategy there because they are a customer-owned substation.
Thank you. Quick, the chair.
Anybody else?
Through the chair, two more, if that's okay. Does this require any additional services or training for the fire department? And if so, will the applicant be paying for that?
As far as services or training, it would be really no different than any other commercial building we have in the township.
Okay.
All right?
Would it require any different equipment or PPE or anything?
No.
Okay,
no.
perfect, thank you.
Commissioner, I think that one of the conditions put forth in the fire marshal's letter was that they should provide emergency response planning and training for the on-site staff as well as Van Buren Fire Department in accordance with IFC and NFPA 85543. I believe that should this ever come to a final site plan approval, that would be one of the conditions that we would ensure.
Okay, thank you.
It's nice to hear the applicant say it, though.
Yes. Okay, and I promise this is my last one. Clarification on, so in our packets, and I understand how renderings work, they're not always perfect. I mean, I've seen plenty of sports stadiums that are supposed to be built one way and they're not built that way. This rendering has like a handful, 10, 15 maybe different types of species of trees and plants, but in the presentation, it looked like it was only evergreen. Can you confirm the type of trees? And then I guess I have a separate question maybe, depending on that answer.
So the question is on tree species specifically?
Yeah, I guess my concern, I can make it easy for you. My concern is that if during the winter, spring, or, early spring, late fall, when the leaves aren't there, if this is serving as a buffer, is it actually serving as a buffer compared to evergreen are obviously green year round, which is the point. And I personally would think that would, at maturity, would provide some of that cover, but that's my question, I guess, is will it be evergreen? Will it be a mix of those trees?
That is correct. So for the screening purposes, there's going to be evergreens that line the entire berm for the sake of screening. And there will be also additional decorative plants along the berm too, lower set, not purely just for screening of the property, but for an aesthetic element along the frontage of Haggerty.
What size will the evergreens be planted at?
The ones along the top of the berm are going to be planted at a 10 to 14 height.
Okay.
14 feet, sorry.
Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Questions? Comments? Okay. At this point, we're going to open it up to the public. The way it's going to work, you're going to have 3 minutes of conversation, up to 3 minutes of conversation, at which point I will stop you because there's a lot of you here and we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak that wants to. You have speaking just for yourself. If you want a rebuttal after everyone else is done, you may have an additional minute and a half. At which point, if there was 5 of you here, wouldn't be a problem. But we got a room full, and we want to hear as many people as we can before we go tone deaf up here. So, and we appreciate you being here and your comments. They are meaningful. So with that in mind, if you could line up along the wall, when you approach the microphone, please state your name, where you're from, and then at which point you will have 3 minutes to continue your conversation. And no, you may not trade it to somebody else. We don't allow that. Okay, with that in mind, please.
Hello, Ken Krakowski, Van Buren resident. One, the DTE substation should be, if they don't know how to get the power to the plant, I mean, they must have spent hundreds of hours and a lot of money designing it. If they can't tell you how they're getting the power there, they know it's from the west but don't have no idea, then it should be put on hold, not denied, on hold till they come back and tell you how they're getting it. Whether it's through somebody's yard, on the service drive, Tyler, however it is, just give us the preliminary. You did thousands of hours on the other site. That should be a minimum of how you get it. That's put the cart before the horse. How you getting it there? Plain and simple. You know where it's at, and you know where you're going. 2, the PCUs. It should be omitted from anything tonight. According to the lawyer, if it's not on that substation site, it should not be at the topic of this conversation. That sound study and anything to do should be either in a final or in another conversation. Nothing to do with any approval of any sort, and it should be stricken from anything on it tonight. The sound study, if the PCUs are not on that and DT's not doing them, they should have nothing to do with it. According to the lawyer, he said it's only for the DTE site. We should be not listening to anything about anything else on that site tonight. I think that's about it. I appreciate it. But those 2 things should be definitely how it's getting there. Pretty simple question. You got a lot of money invested, and I'm sure they know. They don't want to tell you. Because it could go through someone's backyard.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Stakely, and I live over on Sheldon Road, not too far from here. We happened to go through one of the states when we were traveling 22 states that had a data center that also had the electric things were buzzing and snapping. And we stopped at a gas station and you could feel the hum under the gas station. The gas station thought they might have to close down. So I started looking into that the minute you guys said you were getting a data center. And one of the biggest things is the persistent noise is caused by thousands of high-speed fans, roof chillers, large handling units. And what I discovered was there's 200 data centers in Loudoun County, Virginia. Plus, I have a list of other ones here. I looked at about 15 of them. And the one thing that I noticed was that anyone that had power exceeding 60 dBLs was getting the hum. At 75, it was shaking buildings. People are not sleeping. This noise is described as a low-frequency hum, and it can be felt disrupting sleep, causing headaches, vertigo, reducing the quality of life in residential areas adjacent to these facilities. the high power lines, they're huge. I mean, they aren't little small things. These things are absolutely huge. And they're very audible. You can hear this hum, and sometimes you can see the sparks of them. And that's just low frequency ones. The other thing that I wanted to question was the fact of liability by DTE. Right now, DTE has a $100 million fine against them for pollution of clean air. They have 99 more suits that I found that are over $1 million. They're not settling them. They fight and fight and fight. This one was from 20 years ago that just got settled. What are we going to find with DTE pulling that? And I know that they're not honest because they put surges through my house all the time. In fact, one of them put a surge so bad when I was in the hospital, it blew out a whole bunch of our equipment and it flooded our basement because it took out our sump pump. That was over $25,000 worth of damage. We only had $10,000. We turned in the things to them. No, they wouldn't even listen. In fact, they sent a guy out when...
Thank you. Thank you. Your time.
Okay. You guys need to know more.
Got your rebuttal, use it. You got that 1 minute, 100 minutes afterwards, use it. That's the truth, sit close. You take my seat, and we should be polite and give other residents who aren't sitting the seat for these young gentlemen who are sitting and shouldn't be. Good evening, my name is Monique Kirkowski. I live in Van Buren currently. I wasn't quite sure how to spend my time tonight, and I came up possibly not looking like the most professional, but asking a very pointed question. What is the agenda tonight? You have confused this agenda so badly that most of what I want to say tonight conflicts with my own husband because I want to talk about the noise, right? So what is on the agenda tonight? And I'm wasting my time talking about a logistical thing. It shouldn't count because you've blurred it. This should be only the substation, power, whatever, okay? So now that being said, I'm gonna say something controversial because I've said it before to this group and it was perceived poorly and I was torn apart in the evening hours after I'd gone home. I watched it on TV. I'm gonna explain it this way and I was gonna do it nicer, but I'm gonna be clear. There is no single third-party, true independent study that has been presented in any form or fashion tonight. There is zero chance Kimley Korn, I say it wrong every time, I'm sorry, Robert, Kimley Horn is independent. They are not independent. They're paid by the builder. They have in their own website that they are dedicated to the building of data centers and helping the builders get through the process, including sound studies. Their sound study is trash, guys. It is paid for by the builder with information for the builder only. If you accept that as being any form of acceptance of a preliminary, and Jeff, I'm sorry, preliminary is not preliminary. Even the media tells you preliminary is a green light, it's going forward. You were talked about that, you didn't hear it, I hear it. It's preliminary is not preliminary, folks. Kimley Korn partnered with Panattoni in Perry Township. They agreed that that building could not maintain its decibel level. So they coerced the township to change their ordinance to allow it to be 70 decibels. Here we sit trying to believe these studies. Come on, guys. This is not disrespectful, it's a point. Fishbeck and McKenna are paid by the township. The township is on the news constantly saying they want this. So they are paid to consult with the lens that we want it. That is not third party, folks. It's not third party at all. No disrespect for anybody individually, it's not. I really do want a third party study that's legitimate. Look what happened to US Signal when they had a true third party. I still think their numbers blew over the limit. They're plus minus all of those things. But they had to make some adjustments. Truly think about it. And if you approve this tonight preliminarily, it means you've approved it. You did, and you are doing it with so many questions unanswered, blurring the agenda. Guys, this is my home. Don't mess with it.
Good evening, Wendy Albers. I'm actually from Augusta Township, where we're actually also fighting a data center there. A lot of talk about noise, infrasound. That's a sound we can't hear, but animals can and still affects all of them. Data centers, particularly AI and crypto mining facilities, generate significant, constant, 24/7 noise, which I'd also say the EMF is also 24/7, from cooling systems and fans, often producing low-frequency infrasound that travels long distances. These high-energy subaudible vibrations are linked by community reports to headaches, anxiety, sleep disturbances, and vertigo, creating a constant hum that penetrates buildings. Data centers, particularly AI, crypto mining facilities generate semi-constant 24 noise cooling systems and fans, producing low-frequency infrasound below 20 Hz that travels long distances. These high-energy subaudible vibrations are linked by community reports. I read all of that. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. So also, I suggest if you haven't heard or talked to Brady Watson with the Union of Concerned Scientists, that might be a resource that you reach out to. Also today, Yucca put a moratorium, a 12-month moratorium on providing water to Augusta Township and Ypsilanti Township for their water. And I suggest it might be worth a conversation with this commission to reach out to Yucca or the Brenda Stumbo with Ypsi Township. Rates, right? They will tell you they're not going to affect your rates. They're going to protect them, and you won't be paying more. That's almost impossible because we are part of the MISO grid. And once data centers come in, they have to purchase X amount of energy to keep things running, correct? And so when you're bidding on things like that, it increases the floor because you have to make sure that you're buying the energy that you need. So regardless of what MPSC tells you, what Google tells you, what these guys tell you, it's still going to affect your rates. All right. Planning commissions, I really hope that, and this is not just for you guys, it's for everywhere because I've seen it across the board in a lot of communities. We conditionally approve, we give permits when there's plans aren't finalized, we do all this. Do you do that to citizens? Do citizens get as much leeway as these major industrial facilities? I really don't think so. And lastly, there was an oversight committee meeting this morning in Lansing. I suggest each of you watch what happened today and hear from residents. These people, you're talking about their lives, maybe their forever homes, and the decisions that you make tonight or in the future affect them forever. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Brabs. I'm from York Township, half an hour away, and I've been fighting the Saline Township Data Center. I really appreciate your courage and tenacity with pushing for answers to questions. And at the end of what I finished saying to you, I hope that each of you search your consciences and ask yourself, what is the rush? You could vote on postponing even this conversation until the next month. And So let's just talk about some of these players. Breaking news yesterday, in case you didn't see it, is that DTE created a fake front group designed to sway public opinion in Ann Arbor, which is traced back to Florida with power stories there before they figured it out. But it's on the way back machine. All of this is documented. It's lies, money, and it's misinforming people who have spent years getting away from DTE and having their own energy grid, which you know what? Our state law allows. We all have our issues with DTE. We don't need to go through them. Nothing personal about some of people that personally work there. DTE is not the best neighbor to a lot of people. It's just not. There's legal public record documents that just show that yesterday. Go ahead and find them. Now let's talk about ITC. A friend of mine, east of Okemos, 100 homes they're trying to eminent domain 100 homes in Williamston Township. So they're fighting this. They've been having listening sessions, right? So not just there either. So he's right to press them for answers on record. But you know what? We've discovered many of the parties involved in this don't know, possibly don't care. And then if it goes forward, you might even be told in court, for instance, like we were in Saline Township, oopsie, they've gone so fast, they're so far ahead, that would be so bad to stop the construction. As though our rights, our voice, and the law that is supposed to apply in that moment just is not the most relevant thing. Last month, when I spoke to the Board of Trustees, I begged them to do every single thing they can to make sure you are listening to them and you understand what you're talking about. And I have heard several times that some of you don't have questions, you don't have information or anything, you sound defensive of the developer. You should really be thinking about the future of your residents. One of my friends is here tonight with his mom who's disabled. They live across from this substation. This stuff matters. Postpone this.
Thank you.
My name's Ashley Shukai. I am a resident of the Haggerty Sub, and I'm a public health expert epidemiologist that you guys decided not to listen to. What was I thinking? I'm going to say something different since it's not my normal fact-based rant. So to a trusted county, I was warned about. What was I thinking to believe my township would answer to the people? To believe a meeting meant we would be heard. Panattoni opened the door. We walked in with facts, with stories, with our children. They walked in with decisions already made. From the first meeting to the last, they cut us short. They talked over us. They disrespected my child with a disability and called it engagement. That's you. What was I thinking? To a community carried weight. To think that we could match developer influence. To think evidence mattered. While we kept each other alive through COVID, while we delivered food, checked on our elders, held our neighborhoods together, they planned in private. DTE, Detroit Regional Partnership, Detroit Regional Aerotropolis, Van Buren Township. They say they asked us, they say they studied impacts, but the sites were chosen, the outcomes were set. One substation, DTE says, read their application, more will follow. What was I thinking? To not think DTE would bring all of their labor force to say we don't support union jobs, when they are the ones, in fact, with multiple dead employees from unsafe labor conditions and some with lead poisoning. What was I thinking? Google wouldn't give two shits about their known union busing practices while they provide surveillance with the Department of War in Israel to assist with genocide. What was I thinking? To believe access was real when meetings are timed, placed, structured to keep us out. To believe I could rest when silence costs us everything. This is in the system. White savior language covers extraction. Polished slides replace accountability. Poor, Black, and brown communities are treated as expendable ground. Patriarchy signs off, protects itself, calls dominance leadership. Due diligence is reduced to paperwork. Community reduced to a checkbox. Harm reduced to numbers no one lives with but us. What was I thinking? That leadership meant listening to the representation means protections that we were not meant to absorb the damage. We are not empty land. We're not just a place to move. We're not a risk. We are the ones who spoke, the ones who warned, and the ones who are still here. What am I thinking now? We see clearly. We document everything. We refuse to be used. The irony of environmental racism on Earth Day. Thank you, Commissioner Grant, and thank you, Commissioner Pell, for speaking up for us.
Hello, I'm Tracy Osborne, and I live at 10800 Hannon Road, and I live on the back side of that projected property that they're going to develop on. One of the gentlemen mentioned that there's going to be 450-foot poles going in, and the line poles, and he mentioned that they were going to be going to, like, was there 2 substations associated with this, or just one? Because I thought he mentioned 2 substations, and I just had a question about that. Because he said that there was going to be 2 poles going to the north and then 2 poles going to the east. And I'm just curious because I live east of that anticipated substation that's going in on Haggerty. So I was wondering if that's going to affect any of my property over there. I have power lines that run off on the backside of my property that's close to my house, and I'm concerned whether or not any of that stuff's going to affect me. The other thing I have is in regards to the noise. So they did a noise study, a third-party noise study at a facility in New Albany, Ohio for me when I asked for it. So that was an actual physical, sound study that was done. However, what's interesting about it, when I assessed the sound study that was done on Babbitt Road there, they did it at 4 different points around the perimeter of that that particular data center, and from what I assume, I assume that was actually a lesser data center. I think it was like half the gigawatts or half the power that this one's going to be producing. I'm not sure, but the decibel limits at some point were really close to like the residential decibel limits for DBA and DBC. However, where they took the sound levels from was like 800 to 2,000 feet from the actual structures. Okay, so my property line, I'm assuming, will be somewhere close to 100 feet from that largest noisemaker on the property. And so I'm concerned about that. I may do my own personal independent study beforehand to see what the sound is now, and then do my own personal independent study afterwards to see what the sound does at that point, and I'll just foot it out of my pocket. Because this sound concerns me because I have a special needs daughter, and I don't know how low frequency noise affects her. And with us being that close to the property, that the biggest noisemaker on that property, it concerns me. And so I'd like to ask that you consider that and come up with some answers for that, because I'm really concerned. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Roberta Baldwin. I have been a resident of Van Buren Township, really Belleville, for probably 75% of my life. We used to deliver papers to the Buds family on Service Drive. I live on Alden Drive, and I am very upset about this. I think the noise level is going to be beyond what we want. If they're saying they can go up to the limit at 67 and it's at 66.5 or whatever, that's pretty close to the limit. I'm already suffering from cancer. I don't want more brought onto me or my family. I know that there's a drain that goes under 94 because my sons have both told me they used to go and play in that would go under the freeway, and it drains into the lake. How can we not say that that water isn't going to come into our lakes, isn't going to affect our lakes at all? DTE with that, I mean, I'm all about change. I'm with you. You want to do a data center? Why didn't you put it across from the township hall here? Did you want to look at it? Did you guys want to look at all those 150-foot posts across from the township hall here? We don't want to look at it either. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to look at it. We don't want to see it. Those trees in those drawings, they're beautiful after 30 years. But what happens when a storm comes through? What goes down first? Pine trees. Evergreens, they're the ones that get uprooted because they don't have a deep root system. So all those trees, they're going to be up 20, 30 foot. A strong wind comes through, all those are going to go down. What's that going to do? I used to live in the Jackson sub. I wouldn't want to see it or hear it from there either. My brother-in-law used to work at the steel mill. He was an electrician, a high voltage electrician. And he always told me when I bought that house on Jackson Street, you shouldn't live there because it's not safe to live that close to those high voltage lines. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about, he said. I lived there anyway, it wasn't very long. But I beg you, if you don't want to, if you're even 1% saying to yourself, do I really want to do this for these people of the community? I've lived here 72 years. I don't want to move. But when that data center goes in, my house value probably will go down $100,000. But I'm still going to move because I don't want to live by it. And I bet we've already had one person on our road put their house up for sale. And I'm pretty sure that's the reason why. And I think you're going to see a lot more go up. So you're going to lose a lot of revenue from residents, support from residents. Oh, but that's okay, you got Google.
I'm sorry, time's up. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Laura Kurkowski. Just want to preface this. I know nothing about electricity, substation, switch stations, so I might look a little silly up here, but I'm going to ask the questions anyway. So I guess my main thought and question was at the preliminary site plan approval that happened back in February. A lot of the discussion around power, the answers were the grid won't be impacted because of the substation going to be presented now. Well, now, based on the presentation, it sounds like it's a switch station, which was kind of said they're used interchangeably, but also, based on a quick Google search, the difference seems like a substation actually supplies power, whereas the switch station just connects it to existing power lines elsewhere. So it seems like it will now be drawing off of the grid that surrounding residents and businesses use. I guess my main concern is the answers to residents' questions in that first meeting pointed to the substation that seemingly was non-existent and it's a switch station, but they're saying it's the same thing. And I think that's a little bit confusing, at least for somebody not educated in, I don't know, power lines and substations and switch stations. So I think that's a little bit misleading. And I think that there could be more impact to residents than initially maybe thought in that preliminary site plan approval. So I just want that to be taken into consideration as you think about pausing or not moving forward tonight. Yeah, and that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Clara Ganon, and I live in Milan, which is pretty close to the Saline, and I go to a lot of those meetings there, and it's really good to see some board members who actually ask questions and are, because yeah, we don't have that in Saline. But I just wanted to make a comment about data centers becoming noisier. As developers stack more information technology and equipment and servers into smaller spaces, while individual servers are not especially loud, the compounding effect of tens of thousands or tens of thousands of servers in a computing warehouse can raise noise up to 96 decibels. This is a huge problem, especially because it's going to be so close to these residential homes. So I strongly agree with the people who are saying that there needs to be that sound study doesn't really tell us much. I also would like to point out that all of this evading of questions, it really is an answer, right? If they're not going to say yes or no about something, that does give you an answer. They're just trying to mitigate liability. I understand that, but they know, like if you're a PhD, you have opinions, right? Like you can read the research and then come up with your own opinion. To say that you don't have an opinion is a lie. And I strongly urge you to just keep asking questions. Like there's no reason to rush this. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public care to?
Good evening, everyone. I did not plan on coming up here tonight. This is terrifying. I'm Caleb Benor. I live in Ypsilanti, Ford Road, right on the border of Van Buren Township. I was at the YCUA meeting earlier. They did vote in favor of a moratorium to service this site, which presents problems for Van Buren Township. Everybody else has done a great job of expressing the human costs of this, the immediate costs. What I'm going to talk about are the financial burdens that your county or your township is in jeopardy of. If you fail to service the wastewater needs of this site, are you on the hook for anything? If they fail to find a private provider, are you on the hook? And then when it comes to the PCUs, each one of those PCUs that we saw pictures of is the equivalent of 40 to 60 Tesla cars in battery power. Now, when a Tesla car, the battery sets on fire, what you have to do is you just let it burn. It's called thermal runaway. There's no controlling it. It doesn't need oxygen to burn, and it lets off all kinds of toxic gas. So my question is, will the Van Buren Fire Department be on the hook if it's not able to control the fire? Who's gonna be responsible for damages? And are you released from them? Because these financial burdens present a problem long-term for this county to serve its residents. Thank you.
Anyone else care to make a comment? Almost. I shall. Anybody else? Okay, anybody that would like an additional minute and a half may step forward.
Again, this is Monique Kirkowski. I'm going to be super quick because I'm starving, and this is going to be on a lighter side because I was so aggressive last time, but I mean it. It's my home. Don't mess with it. You have time to think about it. Pause it. We're glossing over the 2.7 excess. Have you ever sat in front of a Reese's pack and they come 2 in a pack? Have you ever just ate one, even though you said, I'm going to only eat one? You always eat both. That 2.7 is going to go somewhere. It's called clustering. You are making this a cluster. Finish it how you like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm Ashley. So I just had like some extra questions that popped in my head in regards to the powering system. You know, as they explained it, there's multiple pieces and one part is a battery, right? So then what part of this is not a battery system if it takes a bunch of systems to make a system, right? Like in their explanation of a lot of different pieces, then there's a battery. So wouldn't that be technically a battery energy storage system? I don't know. The sound ordinance is 55 versus the others. So then wouldn't that sound ordinance get reduced to 55 as a standard since that piece is a battery energy storage system? Just a thought, not for now because that's a separate conversation, but since it was brought up, thank you. The other thing is with emergency management mitigation. What happens, like the gentleman said, about the fire risk? That is real. You can look up Moss, California, and many other sites who have had lithium-ion battery fires. What does that mean when it pushes back and there's an offset to people's houses? Does the township take responsibility if these houses get burned, if there's casualties? What is the mass casualty incident because it is so close to a residential as opposed to down Haggerty where it's more of an industrial, right? And I think the other thing is I've seen you all on here and I wish that you still had Zoom. I'm gonna bring it up every time for accessibility because so many could not come here in the Haggerty sub. But I've seen you all do more due diligence when it comes to rain gardens. I've seen you do more diligence just last week when somebody reported me mysteriously for having a naloxone box.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello again. Pulling up my thing. Okay. The Environmental and Energy Study Institute, which advances science-based solutions for a sustainable, resilient, and equitable world, founded by a bipartisan group of members of Congress, has worked since 1984 to provide science-backed educational resources to policymakers and the public. So, what I would like to share that they said about harm and auditory harm is above 85 decibels is considered harmful. That's kind of a known thing. But noises above 65 decibels, there is research to show there's an increase in stress, blood pressure, there's sleep deprivation issues, cognitive performance decreased, there's elderly children, poor functioning at work. There's chronic illnesses. There is research about this. It's through this and other places, but this might be the most credible one that you might find. So this is not something that a berm solves. It's often at night. These are 24 hours a day. I don't even know if anyone's talked about with the data center, if they're using NVIDIA chips, I imagine they are. You know, how Oracle can't build out like 6/7 or something. I can't remember the thing exactly. But they had to scrap like 80% of their plan because they didn't think about how NVIDIA chips are actually new every year.
Thank you.
You know? Well,
Your minute and a half is up. Thank you.
I'm almost done. Ooh. So anyways, don't take my 10 seconds. So anyway, it's important with the battery, the substation, and these combined to think about stuff like this. You're so rude.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
Won't take much time. My name again is Roberta Baldwin. I live on Alden Road, used to be Alden Drive. I just beg of all of you, put it on hold for at least a month. Think about what they're asking. 150-foot poles to stare at. From 130 to 150. That's a lot of industrial. Put them in an industrial center. Why didn't they go up across from where J&W used to be on Haggerty? That was all open. That would have been a beautiful place to put a data center. I would have voted for it hands down. But not when we have all of these homes around it that have been there longer. I mean, I watched Haggerty Sub go in. The other thing to consider on Hannon Road, there's a neurological center. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it or not. It's in Romulus. But all of the people in that home have brain damage. And they don't need this either. They don't need either that, or you guys are going to need to pay for them to move someplace where it's safe for them, because they don't need it. Thank you. Please put it on hold.
Anyone else? Anyone else? With that, commissioners, what's your desire concerning this issue?
I just have one last question. Can I, it's for us, it's not for anyone. Someone mentioned, I can't remember who stepped up, but in sort of in the air of transparency, I understand that the township is selling the water to Cannoli. Is that correct?
Yes, we're providing the water.
And
site.
I know that there's a projection on what that revenue is. Can you let everyone know?
I think our current production is somewhere between $1 million, $1.5 million a year in annual revenue.
Well, just to be clear, last I heard it might be between 2.5 to 2 to 3.
Yeah. It could. We have, as part of the development agreement, we're going to have to renegotiate our contracts with GLWA. Some of our early predictions didn't factor in some of the fixed costs that may have come with that. So right now we're really early in those stages. So it could be up to $2 million.
That was it.
Okay. Commissioners?
Say, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have a couple of questions that I didn't think of in discussion that were prompted by the public, that since we have the engineering staff here, I'd like to run it by them for my own edification, if I may. Might help the planning commission also. With regard to the sound study, I'm hoping that one of the Kimley Horn people could comment. Does the sound study take into account any low-frequency hum or corona discharge sound from the power lines? And does the sound study take into account any noise escaping from the buildings? One of the residents, Linda Stakely, asked or made a point that the computers inside the building are pretty loud. I think someone else made that too. I'm sorry I didn't have the name. And I'm wondering if the sound study took into account the noise being generated inside the building escaping from the building.
Yes, both of those were taken into account in the noise study.
Mr. Chairman, Monique Kurkowski made some points that she felt that the sound studies weren't good. I want to just make a comment to the other commissioners. I'm not a sound study person. I can only go with what's presented to me by the applicant and by what our engineering firm seems to believe. Would it be correct, maybe it's a question for staff, would it be correct to say that if there was a third-party study that someone wanted to present at some point to the township board or the planning commission, that it could be considered as part of the plan? If someone were to pay for a professional study and bring it, we would, and present it during comment and say, here, I want it, this is my public comment, my written comment, it's from my own engineer, this is what I want to say. We can read it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That was my only question on that.
Beneficial to have them do the report and be here.
Sure. We also had another resident, Tracy Osborne, again asked about the sound study, and I guess went and had a sound study done at a location in Ohio. I assume that's I assume that it's, oh, okay, well, I
That was
assume
our
it was a sound
study.
study of one in Ohio, okay. I have a question for staff, and this is regards with ordinance enforcement. If any applicant builds a building in the township and they are a nuisance noise producer and they are shown to exceed the noise limits at the property line and are not in compliance with our township noise ordinance, what happens? I mean, what are the penalties for that?
We would send out the ordinance officers. We had just purchased a sound meter that was a class 2 sound meter, so that way the police department does have a class 1, I believe, sound meter, but we just purchased one for our department. Basically, we would go out, we'd take decibel readings, identify the cause of the noise. Normally, we'd talk to the property owner, see if we could mitigate it, and if we can't mitigate it, it's citations and moving through the courts.
Can I, let me finish my, sorry, Commissioner Paul, I get them in order and I just want to get them done, you know. Mr. Chair, I'd ask a question of staff, another ordinance question. If the screening trees on any property, not just this one, any property in the township that were required as part of a site plan review came down in, say, a tornado, is that just it? They're gone? Nobody has to replace them? They're just done? There's a big old gap?
No, there's a landscape maintenance statement that's on all the site plans that's required by our zoning ordinance. It basically says they have to maintain
and Mr.
it.
Chairman, for staff, that would be something that if someone noticed that happening, they could call ordinance enforcement, and the township has a requirement to go out and enforce said ordinance?
Yes, and we've done that before on a number of properties.
Great. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Those were my follow-on questions. Commissioner Paul, yeah, please. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I would just like to piggyback on that. So you mentioned that citations, is that a fine?
It can be a fine. So our zoning ordinance is set up where we have the ability to issue civil infractions, which are kind of like a traffic ticket. You can list them as a show cause, and they go before the district court judge. We can do misdemeanor violations, which also go before the district court judge, or we could file a injunction, and those go through circuit court.
So I guess Google's the third largest company in the world. They're going to have all the money in the world to draw out a court case. Yeah, I guess, is there any, you say injunction, is there a possibility where we can talk about like shutting down operationally if limits are met? Is that in the township's authority or a judicial authority?
It's, I mean, if a judge intervenes and makes that, so we don't have any ordinances that I'm aware of where I could force them to shut down. If a judge grants an order, and I know, we especially with judges in district and circuit court, because they are locally elected, if a judge does grant an order that they got to shut down or they got to stop operations or resolve the issue or accommodate it, they have to follow the judge's order.
Okay. And this is something that our ordinance officers could, or the township could make those calls to bring it to the court, I guess?
Yes. We have a prosecuting attorney who we work with who has dedicated time with us, and so we coordinate with her on all of our ordinance enforcement cases.
Could I add into that? Well, what I was going to say is if they're confident in their studies and reports that this will not be an issue, then would they be willing, and this is a question, would they be willing to put that into the development agreement?
That
I mean, it's voluntary, right? We're not forcing them to do anything, but they could do that.
would shut down.
Yeah, maybe after a certain period of time, if it's not attended to, I think you would have to give them some time to fix the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly could ask.
I mean, I'm just asking. I mean, if they're confident in their reports.
Would that be the township paying for the court costs or court cases if we're attempting to fine or operationally restrict?
If we did enforce a court case, usually we pay for our prosecuting attorney's time, we pay for our staff time. We could pursue damages as part of the court case, but that's gonna be on a case-to-case basis.
Through the chair. I guess I would agree with Mr. Jar and the other two gentlemen when they talked about where is that line coming from, the lines that are on the, off of the North Service Drive now.
Through your
Where are they
farm.
connected? How is the power coming from the lines? I live next door to the lines now that are on the North Service Drive. I've not seen them spark, I've not seen them do anything, but everybody always says, be careful of the lines. But my concern is what some of you have said. How is it getting from that line to Haggerty Road? And I think we need to know that before we give you preliminary say. We need to know where they at. I think our people need to know that. I want to know that. So I have a real problem not knowing where it's going to go. I heard of towers that were going to be 51 feet. We didn't see the layout of the lines. I think we should have seen that. I understand they're going to be tall, but I think we need a little more explanation of what's going to happen with all that. But that is a great concern of mine.
Through the chair. I want to piggyback on what Treasurer Bud, I've been listening very hard today, and I'm for the project. I mean, just to state that. Now, I also want it to be done to the letter and following all the safety guards, the ordinances, the sound study. I mean, everything needs to be, and I think a lot of what the applicant has put before us, I think hits that mark. The one thing that I have a big question on, and I mean, my gut's telling me they're gonna go down the service drive, but I wanna see it, right? I just don't want it to be a chance that, if we give this and then utilities can sometimes do what they want to do without coming through the commission to get it from the transmission lines to the switch station. That's the whole. And I'd like to see that, so.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that this decision needs to be delayed, given that there's a lot of questions right now. And I mean, I have a whole list of things that I would say I would also like to have included. And of course, in the sound study as well, I'd like to see some reference to aging equipment and how that may have, how the, decibel ratings may, because I would imagine you've heard squeaky fans, right? They get louder as they age. I'm just saying, I think there needs to be some attention brought to that. The one thing as a general comment, I think typically when we talk about noise affecting, I'll just speak to residents, usually that noise is not typically a constant noise. Usually you may have traffic increases during the day where the decibel rating goes up. But this will be a decibel rate that will never go down. I mean, the thing is, it's 24/7. So that, people are typically at work during the day, so it probably wouldn't bother them, all the additional traffic and maybe even the businesses, you know, that have manufacturing, that sort of thing. But this is running through the night as well, so that's just consideration. Maybe they can address that or at least speak to it. Of course, the power to the site's huge. I mean, it's very, especially, I mean, look, it may go across your farm for all you know. I mean, well, no, it doesn't because it's on the edge of it, but I mean, that's the perfect spot to head east. Wastewater, I think there needs to be some commentary, even though I think currently, I'm not sure how they tied into the system to assure that maybe there isn't any effect to the people of Van Buren Township if somehow that changes. And I don't know the particulars, but at least I'm bringing it up. With regard to the PCUs as well, I'd just like a little bit more background information because they are batteries. You know, they essentially are batteries. I mean, if you took the batteries out, they can't run, right? So I would like a little bit more, to know a little bit more about, hey, yeah, what happens if they catch fire? You know, and what kind of harmful vapors may drift into the neighborhood, close, you know, and how that might affect you. So I think all this additional information needs to be provided to us. And procedurally, it makes sense if we, I don't know what we term it, but if we get these questions answered and talk about the approval at a later date, whether or not at that time it should just be combined into a single preliminary site plan, because the original one should be modified anyway, should have been. So maybe this just gets combined into one preliminary, whereas you answer all these questions, which also lead back to the original one anyway, where we weren't able to. It seems like as we move forward, we pull more information out that's very important with regard to how it affects all the residences in our community at large.
Through the chair. You know, you said that we didn't ask many questions. Well, I guess because I work here, I've asked a lot of my questions during the day when I have talked to Ron and the different ones. And I do know we've talked with one of our service provider, which is the South Huron Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant, that will be taking any wastewater from this facility. Those arrangements have been made, so we know that those things are protected. So there's a lot of things that we have done to make sure that they're going to be protected. But I do believe that there are still some questions that need to be answered before we can go through this. I mean, they've got preliminary. I think the project is going to go. I don't think I'm fighting the project, but I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it and see what we can do to make it the best for the people we live with, because we all live here.
So what is our druthers?
Mr. Chairman, personally, I think that I would be a lot happier if we could get this combined application, multiple site plan thing condensed into one site plan approval that is to be a modification of the original site plan that has answered the questions regarding the power line placement, the tower placement, and any of the conditional, points that we brought up on the very first site plan approval. Having it split like this is confusing. It's very confusing to us, and I'm not sure that I'm not sure I'm making a mistake if I were to approve this. Am I approving some other thing that landed on a plan that is incongruous with the first thing we approved? I don't know. It hasn't been reviewed. It hasn't been reviewed in that way. I would like to see a site plan amendment from the first site plan, preliminary site plan approval, come forth with an amendment to the approval that is the updated full site plan now that the ownership of the parcel is determined. You know, the applicant knows what the switching yard needs to look like. The applicant knows where the towers need to go for the power lines. They have more information available than they did for the preliminary. It seems to me that we ought to be able to get this under one plan. We're gonna have to get it under one plan eventually for final. It might be a good idea to get a preliminary site plan amendment that covers the changes to the generators, the changes to the BESS, the shape of the switch yard, and the concerns that were generated from the very first site plan approval. That's my opinion. I agree. Yeah, that's what I think we probably should do, because questions. I really want to see where the power is coming into the switchyard. I understand that the power is coming out of the switchyard through 2 lines with some type of overhead clearance on some kind of towers that I didn't see on the plan. But knowing how the power comes in is a big deal to us. We at least, I mean, I maybe don't need to see the path that the underground lines take from halfway across the township in. That's a different construction project. But just knowing where they're coming into this plan would help us understand how the power is coming in. I feel like I'm being asked to approve a switchyard that hasn't been energized yet.
Right.
A light switch has to have a power source, and I don't know where that's coming from. I see what it's going to turn on, but I don't know how it's going to be powered up, and that's a concern for me, not knowing where the power's coming in on the plan. I think there's enough questions on it that we could have another preliminary site plan review with those questions answered. Maybe that site plan review is on the same day as the final site plan review. I don't know. I'm just saying that is a possibility. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I didn't mean to address anyone out of turn. That is a possibility in our ordinances, that a final site plan can actually happen on the same day as the final site plan approval. It all has to happen eventually. I think having a combined preliminary site plan and looking at it early before the final site plan would be a great idea. That's what I think.
And we also, remember the third party, we need to have that third party sound study.
That's how I feel.
So, is there any move for a motion? Is there?
Is it a motion, or do we just say?
Do we just let it?
Depends on what you want to do, Mr.
Well,
Grant.
I'm in agreement with you. I think we need to have this combined. For one, it procedurally, it's very confusing because it's sharing information for something that was previously approved. So I agree that this, combining into one, first of all, I think this one needs to sort of answer some more questions anyway. The big one being, where's the power coming from? Which, if you're needing to modify this one anyway, as a preliminary, you might as well do the whole thing. Because like, Commissioner Jar said, you're gonna have to do it anyway. So you might as well just do it now. So that's where I'm at.
So is anybody going to entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask staff about the other options on this. One of the options would be to grant this preliminary site plan approval.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, one of the options would be to grant this preliminary site plan approval. Another one of the options would be to straight up deny this preliminary site plan approval, which I don't think it's actually warranted. And another one would be to postpone it or table it until conditions are met. Is that procedurally what one would do?
Yes, so there's 3 choices that the planning commission have. You can deny the plan approval. You can approve the plan approval, based on the recommendations, make the motions like it normally would. Or if you make the decision to postpone, the one thing that I would ask that if you do make the decision to postpone is make sure we're very clear with what we're asking to have information brought about. So that way we know what to bring back.
Commissioner Grant, you feel like making a motion? Making a motion, sir?
Well, I can tell you this, if I'm making a motion, is to deny, because I think that this is nothing but an adverse effect on the neighborhood. I mean, I don't think that, honestly, I don't know of one positive, and I believe all the risk is on Haggerty Sub, completely. It'll benefit developers, there's no doubt about that, and as their attorney constantly says, that they get this regardless. But the thing is, what they haven't considered is, because they don't live there, what the impact on these people are. And quite frankly, I'm not sure they really care. All they care about is getting this built. So I think there's negative effects. First of all, I don't think anyone's going to rush out from the presenters and buy and invest land, that residential land next to the day center, because they know darn well it's going to stagnate land values. They're not going to appreciate it with current market rates similar to other areas. They just aren't. I mean, everyone knows that. I'm really concerned about this, these power lines potentially with no answer, as to where these might run through here. And there's too many other uncertainties where you can't get any guarantees from the developer, with how it may affect people. It's very wishy-washy. They know darn well they're not taking on the risk. They reap all the benefits. If it's based on me, I'd be denying it. But I mean, it's really up to the rest of the commission as well.
Commissioner Paul, you're probably I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes.
ask the other commissioners just a straw poll where they're at
Sure.
on this before I spend a lot of time crafting a motion that I don't have pre-written, that I don't have in front of me?
I agree with Commissioner Grant. If I were to make a motion, it would be to deny.
I don't think denying it will solve anything, because we've given them preliminary approval on the site. So it would be my wish that we would postpone this until we can get answers.
Today would be denying just today's application, not the entire thing.
And the only thing we have against what's out there today is where that line comes in.
No, that's about the economic,
No, that applies to the entire site. We're looking at just one. When you're talking the economic,
No. It applies to substations that are sitting in the middle of the site, and I already had gone through it. And the thing is, there's going to be an economic hit for all 600 homes plus that are in that area. As one of the I don't remember their names. As one of the lady mentioned, I'm leaving. I'm moving. I'm going to sell right away because my home values are going to go down, even if I have to take a $100,000 hit. Here's the thing. The socioeconomic, makeup of this area will definitely decline over time because home values they'll be undersold what you might be able to get for them now once this whole development's completed.
that's a supposition. We don't know that absolutely.
It's a risk. It's a risk that you're placing on the residents. It's a risk you're placing on the residents.
I didn't say that they won't. Yes. Yeah, we're not going to get
I
into
had
that
if I could
discussion.
just ask for a point of order. I had asked for a straw
Straw
poll
poll.
from the commissioners regarding their thoughts on what a motion might look like. The two commissioners here thought we ought to deny. I was wondering if I could get some.
Postpone.
You feel that postponement would be in order?
Postpone.
Postpone.
I'll go with
Commissioner
that.
Budd, I believe, says also postponement. I think that that being the case, I would, at this time, feel it would be appropriate to make a motion to postpone. If the rest of the commissioners would you allow me to make that motion at this time, sir? May I? Okay. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I move to postpone. Oh, dear. Someone said that they watch a lot of the meetings on TV and watch what we do and how we do it. I want you guys to know, I usually write the motions out. I usually write out more than one. I sometimes write out a denial, sometimes I write out an acceptance. It's pretty rare I write a postponement, and I don't have one written up, so I'm gonna wing it. Please, yeah, I could deny it, huh? No. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was inappropriate. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I move to postpone, here we go, that's what I'm looking for. In the matter of item number 1, 26004, DTC ITC substation preliminary site plan approval, I move to postpone the decision regarding the request by applicant DT Electric Company in collaboration with ITC proposing the construction of the high voltage substation and switching station, this parcel being located on the east side of Haggerty Road, across from Old Haggerty Road, within the boundaries of the Cannoli Data Center. The Planning Commission, having found that there are sufficient questions with the site plan, including the analysis and conditions that were called out in the letter from McKenna dated April 13th, the Fishbeck letter dated April 16th, and the Van Buren Township Fire Report dated April 16th, all of 2026. This to be postponed until such time as the applicant can present a unified site plan containing the data center and the switching equipment that addresses the concerns presented, including how the power is to be delivered onto the site, plans for the power poles, the overhead clearance of the lines, and I believe that is sufficient unless there's discussion from the other commissioners.
Yes, could I maybe add a couple things, like an update?
Wait, we've got a motion.
I think there would, actually, yes, I'd seek support for the motion, then we have discussion, that's how it works.
Support.
We have a motion and support to postpone. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
I just want to add to it, if it makes sense, to update the noise, the acoustic report, adding into it something regarding the aging of the equipment and the increase of the decibels for that. Yeah, I would agree. The power, and also some additional information on the PCUs with regard to them, the batteries, and what would happen during a fire, and what kind of cause that might be of concern to the residents. And I guess as a last request too, we don't have a cohesive perspective. It's always little, snippets of different versions. I was wondering if you could provide, and I know that we've done it all the time. It's very simple to do, is to provide some aerial perspectives of the entire site with all of the equipment, all the power lines, everything that you plan on putting on the site and constructing.
Are you willing for that?
Mr. Chairman, I heard the comment. Do any of the other commissioners have any discussion of the motion that I put forth?
I don't have any further discussions.
Could I ask staff, I have my own discussion. Staff, this would be a request. Is what I put into the motion sufficient for you to act on? You had asked me to make a motion that would be specific about what we were looking for. Do you feel that what I put in the motion was sufficient for you to act?
Yeah, so I wrote unified site plan, determination how power will be delivered to the site, overhead clearance of lines, diagram of the utility poles, an update of the acoustical report, which represents the aging of equipment, a representation of a scenario with the PCUs and what would happen during a fire and any potential impacts to adjacent properties, and then cohesive aerial perspectives showing all improvements on site.
Mr. Chairman, I'd amend my motion to also include the items listed by Director Akers.
Second.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add one. We talked about the third-party acoustic report too, so kind of makes sense that we add that in, right?
I think that would be appropriate for final. I think for this, because this is still preliminary, I would want a final acoustic report from a third party for final, my opinion.
I'm not sure that I would agree with that. Get it over with. Do it now. Get done.
Mr. Chair, can I make one more comment as well, or discussion?
Yeah, we're discussing.
Could we also, and this can come from staff maybe, confirmation on wastewater capacity? There was some talk of Yucca. I know we're talking about South Huron Valley wastewater. Just clarifying there.
I can give you that answer now if you like.
Let's maybe not do that while we're in the middle of a motion, please.
Any other discussion concerning the motion?
Stands as amended.
Did want to ask about this third-party sound study, what the expectations of the commission are. Is it, we have the Kimley Horn report reviewed by a third-party consultant? Because
I'd say one of the concerns that I have is that the potential of equipment adjusting as the design proceeds. So if we would have done a third party the first time around, we would have said, yes, it's good, and then they go to the PCUs. Now, we can obviously have them review it again, but as Commissioner Creel mentioned, typically in something like this, we would do a preliminary review, and then before final site plan, we would do a full third-party engineering, similar to like a traffic study or things along those nature. As the site changes, as things adjust, we're happy to get a third-party review. We're happy to have them do it, whatever.
Because
Matter of when, right? Because to me,
Yeah,
if you're just reviewing their report when they're saying adjusting their equipment, which I understood was fixed, if they're adjusting their equipment and you just review theirs, I see it a little bit like the fox in the hen house a bit. And I would say that, I don't know who brought it up, but the third party seems to make sense to me. At least what it would do is it would help residents say, look, we had representation and it wasn't from someone else.
concern, because I want to make sure I understand. So we're talking about a third-party company reviewing their sound report.
Actually doing a sound study.
Even if you have, so I just from a logistical standpoint, in order to secure a third-party company to review a sound study, either the township has to hire them to perform it, and then they have to get data on equipment and information from the applicant to provide that, or the applicant has to hire a different company than Kimley Horn to do that, and it's you have the same issue. So
But you don't, you have to do it. It has to be done through the township. You would have to just get our own consultant. If you really wanted to, you could have them review it again if you want, just so they can do a comparison. But I think we need to have our guy standing there saying, yeah, they're correct, or yeah, well, they're not, or we need to make some adjustments.
I think that goes back to what Director Akers is asking, is that the developer provides the information they used.
Yes.
Right? Because otherwise you're having a third party, you're having the developer supply the information that is used. So to bring up an example, the buildings, right? They would have to provide, like they're providing the thickness of the walls. They're providing, so that's just
They're providing all the input that the independent acoustician would be using to develop the report. So they work for us, but get information from them. That's the idea.
So, point of, just through the chair, I think that's what you're saying, right? That they'll do that analysis more in depth. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth. That's what I heard you say, right? Before the final site plan approval. Is that when you normally do that?
So the way that I would see it happening, but again, however you guys want to proceed with it, is we take their information as this gets developed. They're showing on their information that they're meeting the ordinance, they're meeting the sound, and then prior to final engineering, similar to when we do analysis of water, sewer, we're looking at feasibility, and then they provide the full engineering study, their files, all the information that they've used.
I know this, I do this, I do that daily, but the thing is, there's no independent representation on our side. If they do the study, give it to you, and you just analyze whether they did it right or wrong.
Wouldn't be me. I'm saying somebody.
Independent of you, but you're still taking their study that they've developed that represents them, not us, and they're saying it's great, and you're saying, oh, let me check and see.
Can I ask a question? How is a third party, when this has not been constructed, there's no walls, there's no place to, they're gonna take all that information that's there, how thick the walls are, what the company provides as far as the chillers and.
They're not working for them, they're working for us. That's the difference.
But how is the numbers gonna be different? Numbers are gonna be numbers.
Let's say the fox in the hen house again. The fact is, they are the ones that are paying the people that are doing the testing, whether or not we, my point is that I think the residents would feel better if we had our own representation on the study. It could differ. Their methodologies could slightly differ. Their measuring equipment could slightly be different. I mean, that you don't know.
It's not gonna be measuring anything. They're going to be taking data that's given them.
They're modeling it.
And also, if it comes back the same, then
We're
that's
good.
confirmation. But if
Right.
it comes back different, then it could be cause to look into it further, or look into the methodologies, or look at.
Just to be clear, if I may, you gentlemen
Please.
are proposing that the Van Buren Township employ a second engineering firm to
Well,
model
they're
this?
not doing the testing, they're doing the reviewing.
Could you answer the question? Are you proposing that Van Buren Township engage a separate engineering firm
Yes.
other than Fishbeck? To do the model?
Modeling, they're just doing a review of the report. And they don't stand next to them as they do the modeling. The thing is,
Mr. Chairman, could I ask Mr. Cameron another question? Mr. Cameron? Mr. Cameron, my understanding is that Fishbeck's going to review the model for engineering viability. You're going to look at their report and make sure that it makes sense. Did I hear you say you were going to have a separate sound engineer review the report?
So we would not review the model. We do not have acoustic engineers on staff, so we would hire a third party, either through Fishbeck, or it could be somebody that the township hires independently, and they would do the review of the sound study.
And are we talking about a review of the sound study or a whole separate
Whatever you
modeling
guys-
from first data? That's, I think, maybe what these
So,
guys are.
so
what the
let
gentlemen are
me,
asking about.
if I can, so if we were to do a traffic study, we would take all the information that was collected by an independent on the number of cars going down a road. Typically, engineering firms throughout wouldn't go out and recount unless they saw something that looked wrong. So as Panattoni, the owner, Google, somebody's gonna have to supply some information. The amount of server, we're talking going down all the way to the amount of servers in the building. Somebody is supplying the information, whether it's industrial standards, right? And they're gonna have to supply the precise equipment that they're going to. So there is still a lot of information that is coming from the
no, I know this.
the owner.
I guess my point I'm trying to make is if you want to remove all doubt from the residents who are sitting there doubting everything you're doing, it's probably the best way to do it.
Mr. Chairman, as a planning commissioner, I don't have the authority to direct the Township Board of Trustees to go off and sign a
That's a
contract with
question, yeah,
anybody.
that may be a
But it
question.
may be something that we could ask staff to approach the Township Board or consider what would it take to have the modeling performed by a third party and come back to us with what your findings are. We can't require it. I can't require the Township Board, the elected officials to assign something because I say so.
Approved by them, I
Wish
get
could.
it, yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
I get it. If they need to approve it, then we'd like them to do that.
So that is not added to your, okay. So with that, we have.
Motion, I believe there was support.
Somebody gonna call the question?
Question? What question?
Question, isn't that what you say to cause the vote?
Roll call.
Well, let's call that question. Let's have a vote on that.
Roll call vote, please.
Bernie Grant?
That's correct, right? Yes is, yes.
Chairman, point of order. A yes means postpone.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Sherry Budd?
Yes.
Medina Atchison? Yes. Jackson Paul? Yes. Jeff Shar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move to postpone this until we can get additional answers to move forward. And at that point, we haven't denied, just looking forward. Okay, with that, at this point then, we move ahead, general discussion and updates. Do you have anything to add? Any commissioners? Before I make the final move, I do want to thank you for attending tonight. I also want to say how proud I am to be from Van Buren Township, from the way you folks behaved and took care of yourself. We've seen too many other things on TV, through the news, where the public doesn't give the board an opportunity or the commission an opportunity to work within themselves. And I really appreciate you folks behaving the way you did. Thank you very much. And with that in mind, I would entertain that offer.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion and support to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No opposed. Meeting's adjourned.